Okay, I think we're live.
Yeah, should be.
All right, maybe for procedural purposes, I'll just start something here, just say a couple of words about public process and ability for what type of ways the planning board has tried to receive some comment on this project. I think it's important just in light of COVID and not being able to, everyone be able to meet in a normal setting. We have provided public notice as per the ordinance. And in addition, we have offered up and sought to be submitted for planning board via email, letters, phone calls. They're able to comment on YouTube while we're going through this meeting. We also have Janice will be, and we'll have Janice's email. It's jeasency. Everyone can see her name there probably, at camdenmaine.gov. She'll be receiving any new emails or any comments that people have as well, just to provide people with plenty of opportunity to try to reach out and provide comment. And we also offered people the opportunity to get the Zoom link to the meeting. And we did that, and we've received a number of, not many, as many as I thought, actually. We got 4 people that requested the Zoom invite. And those are all, for the most part, abutters on C Street. So that's where we are. I guess, Rosie, you can start with the regular procedure for the meeting, and then I'll jump in and explain the hearing and how we got here.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good evening, everybody, or afternoon, and welcome to Thursday, November the 19th meeting 2020 of the Camden Planning Board. First, I need to ask if there are any public comments on non-agenda items. No.
I did not get any comments either.
No. Okay, great. Okay, seeing none, let's minutes. Do we need to look at minutes?
Not today, but we do need to
Okay.
get some minutes. That is absolutely true.
That's on my list. Okay.
Yep.
So the main order of business tonight is looking at a site plan review, an amendment to approved plan done by Gartley and Dorsey Engineering for Camden Properties LLC, and the applicants are Cabot and Drew Lyman. We probably should start by listing the members present here at the meeting today. I'm just going to list them to keep things moving. There's myself, Rosie Curtis, the chair, Ethan Shaw, Jeff Senders, Matt Siegel here? Yes, there he is. Hi, Matt. And Mark Siegenthaler. I believe that's all the members of the planning board right now. I have to ask all the members here, do you need to declare a bias or conflict of interest on this project?
No.
No.
Oh, Drew lives down the road from me, but I don't think there's a conflict there.
Thanks, Sheriff. Okay, so we're clear, all good. Okay, and we're saying that the applicant does have standing to apply because the application packet that's been received includes the deeds in the applicant's name. Given that that's the case, I think we can move on to the applicant's presentation now. Hand it back to Jeremy.
Prior to that, yeah, Rosie, I'll just give a little summary of where we are, what this project is, and why it's before you. So as I think most people know, Lyman Morse unfortunately there was a fire this past spring, right as COVID kind of hit, devastated the business, and they're looking to rebuild in the location. The building was very old facility, and I think the fire chief would agree that fighting a fire in that kind of building is a challenge. It was hodgepodge put together over the course of many years. And then unfortunately the fire was able to get into this fire and smoke damage was able to get through the building quite extensively. So Lyman and Morse is before you with a request to demolish that existing structures that were damaged by the fire, and then construct new structures in generally the same location. The large 11,000 square foot building at the southeast corner of the property is going to remain. That's their big, large service building there. And they're going to construct new buildings. And the existing boardwalk will be reconstructed, and 2 green courtyards will be developed in addition to site work that includes some parking, amongst other things. In terms of square footage of the building, there's 31,400 square feet of existing building that will be demolished. And the new square footage will be 32,924 square feet, which is a net increase of 1,500 square feet, 1,524 square feet. And then the site plan ordinance, which is Article 12 of the zoning ordinance, requires them to come to you because of Article 12, Section 1.1, which is this is a proposal for new construction of a non-residential building in excess of 1,000 square feet. So certainly they trigger it. I have reviewed, and actually Steve Wilson did when he was here a little bit, reviewing some of this in the early review of this from a zoning perspective. And I reviewed this application. We find it complete and in conformance and compliance with the town's zoning ordinance. And that the applicant has standing. You've already identified that, since they do have right title interest to the property. I will say that you all will recall, and for the public's benefit, there was a pre-application meeting that happened a month or so ago, where Lyman and Morse came to the planning board and discussed in a pre-application format on what was being proposed. Out of that meeting came a desire to have a site walk. There was a site walk on site a week ago, November 12th, 9 o'clock in the morning. All of the planning board members were there. There were 3 members of the public that showed up, and which was nice to see some members of the public there, for sure. And then Lyman Morse representatives, as well as Will Gartley. And what they did was explain the project, and there was no review happening, and it was just for kind of clarification and site specific where things are today and where things will be in the future. That's what the discussion was really about. And that's where we are. So now I'm going to hand it over, I think, to Will and Lyman and Morse. And I know there's some other folks here. I think we have some folks from not only Lyman Morse, but their traffic engineer, as well as Greenspur, their architect, that's working on this project. And the applicant will detail their project, and the board will then discuss, have questions, discuss what the project's all about and the issues that the planning board believes there are, and just process this. And then it will go into a public comment period. The public hearing, the board will have to vote to go into public hearing, and then we'll take public comment at that point. Due to COVID and the way public comment has been received, I am going to read into the record, and I think everyone has been shared. Everyone, I think, on this board here has been shared all of the public comments that we have received via email thus far. I will read those into the record so that people watching at home can hear them as well. And then the board then can ask questions of the applicant, and then the board can continue on. So with that, I'll give it to you, Will. If anyone has any process questions, you can feel free to ask me now, or we can hold off. But we will continue to monitor YouTube and emails to J Esancy, ESANCY, JESANCY at camdenmaine.gov, and she'll provide those comments to the board and the applicant during the public comment period. And we'll also be doing that on YouTube and sharing them at that period as well. Okay? Sound good?
Plan.
Okay.
All set, Rosie? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy. That was a pretty good introduction, and you took away some of my thunder, but I'm pleased to be here tonight to represent Lyman Morse and their new Inner Harbor waterfront development. As Jeremy mentioned, Randy Dutton, who's a traffic engineer and assisted us with this, is here to answer questions later if need be. If I can, do you mind if I share my screen, Rosie?
Muted.
Go ahead, Will.
Okay, did that do it? Can everybody see it?
It's working on it. Yep, you're up.
Okay, great, thank you. So I put up a survey plan that shows all of the property that Camden Properties LLC and CL Camden LLC own, which is the property that Lyman Morse operates. And just for reference, over to the left side where my cursor is Atlantic Avenue. Then you turn down C Street, and their first property at the head of the harbor is there. They recently got permission to remove and replace the red boathouse that's at the head of the harbor. Continuing down C Street, they have their first entrance, which accesses the lower inner harbor boatyard portion of the property, where this project is completely contained right in this area. If you keep coming down C Street, there's another access into this lower area where they have right now their trailers and their temporary office space. There's an area here that's historically been used for storing boats and for parking vehicles. Steamboat Landing is over here, and then the big area that they refer to as the Bean Yard is the other property to the east that they own. None of the proposed development is occurring over here at this time. So this building here was not damaged by fire where my cursor is, but that building is being removed. It's quite an old building, and it's seen better days. So it's going to be part of the redevelopment. All of the buildings here that are adjacent to and touching the facilities building that they have here and the workshop building that's going to remain, these were all damaged by the fire and all going to be replaced. I'm going to switch to, did that stop sharing?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so
You're
now
back
I'm
to being
supposed
you.
to do the site plan. All right, hopefully that one's back up.
Yep, you're
Yep.
up.
Okay. Make that a little bigger. All right, this shows the area that that we're I'm trying to get it so that you can see all of it here. So here's the area that we're redeveloping. The buildings that are in brown are new buildings. Since the pre-application meeting, the one major change is that there was an additional building down at this end that has been removed. That area has been opened up so that there's better yard area for working on masts and rigging, and also to create a couple large overhead doors at this end of the building to be able to get the mast in there. When that's not being used for getting in and out of that building, then this area will double as a 15 space parking area. There's a retaining wall along here, and some of the other additions from the pre-app are just more construction details, like we're showing a new water entrance, both domestic and sprinkler. We've got a new pump station. There is a pump station down there now, but we're going to upgrade that and provide a new one with a sanitary line that runs under the boardwalk along the face of the buildings to collect sanitary from these buildings. We've shown a couple exterior propane tanks and an enclosed dumpster area, and also some stormwater management. This area is pretty flat, and so we've created a low point in the middle of this new parking area that's going to have a catch basin with an outlet to the shore. The other thing that we've updated is handicap parking. We've shown some additional handicap parking here with an access onto this portion of the boardwalk that's actually going to be ramped up. So this entire area is going to be raised to elevation 11. Right now it's at about 9.5. And all of the buildings will be at 11 for first floor elevation. And that's relative to NAVD 88, which is the datum that we've used. We use that datum because it corresponds with the FEMA floodplain maps, and it keeps us on a comparable datum. So The one building that's going to be higher than that is the restaurant, the first building, and that's because right here, this red dashed line is the change in the flood elevation from 12 to 10, and the floors need to be 1 foot above that. And I was going to mention as a reference, on 11/17, we had the highest tide of the year, which was about 6.9 elevation at AVD 88. And so you can kind of see, if anybody was down in the harbor on that day looking at that high tide, our first floor of the lowest buildings will be 4 feet above that, and the restaurant will be 6 feet above that. So I know there's been a lot of talk about what elevation we should be at, and we should be as high as we possibly can be. We have done that according to the ordinance and according to the FEMA requirements. And I just wanted to point out that we will be 4 feet above what that high tide elevation was this week. One of the other things that was asked for last time, and it was part of Greenspur's submission, was a program plan. So that's in the packet, and I can get to that in a bit. We outlined all of the spaces, the square footages, and what the changes were between existing and proposed. All of the uses that were proposed are allowed under the BTH section in the ordinance. Most of them already exist. Some of them are changing in size, some getting a little bigger, some getting a little smaller, but most of the proposed uses already exist on site. Let me see, I'm trying to think. Why don't I switch to, does anybody have any questions about the site plan? I was going to then next go to Greenspur's submission and kind of go through for everybody else watching the elevations and kind of the aesthetic of the proposed structures.
Any questions at this point? I'm not seeing any, Will, so
Okay.
I think you can keep going.
Let me see if I can find. Hopefully I'm back.
You're back.
Okay, you can see the Greenspur sheet. Okay, so this was the beginning of their package, and let's see here. The first thing they showed was basically where all the lights would be and the type of lighting. There's going to be some low-level lighting on the boardwalk, and then some shielded lights on the buildings. And so all of those locations are shown on this plan. And this was the elevations. They're certainly not as fun to look at as the perspectives, which I'll get to in a second. The reason we showed these, though, is just to provide the dimensions of the building heights. All of the buildings are going to be 24 feet above that first floor elevation, which is required under the floodplain ordinance. And according to the BTH zone, then we're allowed to have a building height of 24 feet above that flood elevation line, floor elevation. So all the buildings will be 24 feet above that, and there's dimensions on all of these that represent those. And whoops, this is touchy. And so here's a view kind of from across the harbor, looking at all the buildings. If I start down on the southerly end, then this is the proposed restaurant. And as we head north, there's a green space between the restaurant and the distillery building, which is right here. And this is actually part of the distillery building. And then there's a potential retail in here and supply and store type of thing. And this is Lyman Morse's office building. This is where all of their staff rooms, offices, meeting rooms are intended to be. And then as we go down this way, there'll be some additional office space that will be for lease. There'll be some crew quarters for boat crews while boats are being worked on, and some additional rental space. Then this is the only portion from this view of the new work building. This is where the rigging building is that I mentioned, and there's some overhead doors at this end for bringing in masts. And the building right here is building 1. And so most of this will be below the elevation of that existing building. This is at the northerly end, looking at a little bit of new green space. This is new building here. There's a mix of roof and architectural styles that Greenspur included. This is standing at the north end, kind of looking south. And then as we travel from north to south, Lyman Morse's new office space, the distillery, the green space, an expanded boardwalk. There'll be more deck area there than there is now. The buildings don't come out quite as far in a lot of places. It's a more consistent width. And then the restaurant space. This is the existing building 1 that's in the back. A lot of work has been done to that over the summer to upgrade that facility. All of it interior. And then that's, if you were sitting down by the travel lift or the fuel tanks that are on their dock, looking back, this is the southerly end entrance of the restaurant. That's as you approach coming down the hill. This is standing in front of the boat lounge looking north. This is the program plan that we talked about. I know that everybody was asking for a little bit more of a description of what things are going to be. This is the new rigging building. On the second floor, they're going to have electronics, and then the Lyman Morse management in this portion. Some crew quarters on the second floor over these buildings, and then office space and distillery, restaurant, and again, restaurant, distillery, and all of the spaces are in here. And we've got the square footage broken up and also the net of the 1,500 square foot that we've gained overall compared to what's there now.
Thank you, Will. Is that it?
I think that completes it. So I'm just going to put the site plan, or do you want me to just hold off or do you want me to put the site plan up so that we can refer to it, or what would you prefer?
I mean, I think maybe if you are listening in to people's questions, if you could put up what's needed.
Okay.
If needed. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's fine.
That makes sense, Jeremy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Can for process and just like where we are with this meeting, can Janice or Jeannie, can you let me know anytime if we have any comments, and we won't take them now, but if anyone has commented either via YouTube or an email to Janice since this started?
I got an email from Kathy Young.
Okay. Is that?
And I have one from Connie Dean, a comment on YouTube about
Okay.
the elevation.
Okay, perfect. We'll just get to those when the time's right. Perfect. I just want to make sure that people are able to comment.
Yep.
We're getting them, so that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we keep going. Okay, so I have a. Do we need to? I have a finding here that we have the authority to review this under Article 12, Section 1, because this is a non-residential building of over 10,000 square feet.
Correct.
And we're advised that we can rely on the applicant's application packet dated November the 4th, 2020, and the memo from Jeremy Martin dated November the 16th to find that the application is complete.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, we had the revised plan that came in on, I think everyone has that plan. That's the plan that's up on the website. So that is a more recent plan. Correct, Will?
Okay. Do we need to make a motion that we find this complete? Or are we just noting that?
If there's a consensus that it's complete and you have enough information to go forward, that's the idea.
Okay. Do the members of the planning board feel that this application's complete? I've got a yes from Jeff, Ethan, Matt. Jeremy's nodding his head no.
No, keep going. Sorry.
We're
No.
good. Okay, Mark, are we all good to go? Do you find it complete? Yes. Wonderful. Okay. So in that case, do we need to make a motion to find that's complete? Jeremy, can we go ahead and see if the board has any questions?
You do. Find it complete.
Okay. So I would make a motion that this application is complete. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Ethan. Members of the planning board in favour. Can I either get a signal or a
Aye.
yes from Jeff, yes from
Aye.
Ethan, yes from Mark? Thank you. Yes from me. So that's unanimous. 5-0. So I think we move on to now any questions that board members may have about this.
Correct. Before we get, now, keep in mind, everyone, try to stay kind of where you were before COVID, but we're kind of dealing with, normally you would just have conversation, discuss what the applicant has proposed to you, right? And discuss what they've submitted. You unfortunately have had the opportunity, or maybe fortunately, I mean, it's the pluses and minuses to all of this, that you've received some comments already from the public and you've been able to read them. So I think it's just important to save your discussion about comments that you have received for the time when that happens, after the time I read the letters we've received that you already have read. So save that discussion until then, but ask the applicant any questions at all that you might have at all about this project. And you might have been thinking about some of the same issues that the public have brought up in comments. So those are legitimate, just carry on. I just want to point that out. We're not here to deliberate any of the stuff that you have read via letters or emails that you've received. Okay?
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yep.
So any board members have any questions non-related to comments received? Not, yes, Mark.
Yeah, I could start. Well, I'm looking at the plan here and I had a couple of questions, and what's labeled as Courtyard 1, that's rental space, is that right? Is that correct?
You're looking at the program plan?
I'm looking at the program plan.
Okay, hold up. Let me,
Well, maybe bring this up on share your screen if you can while you're doing this.
yep.
So we're talking down there to the, yep.
Oh, the courtyard space. Those are open public spaces.
I think he's talking
Oh,
about.
right, okay, yes, Courtyard 1, that's where I'm looking. So gallery
Yep.
Gallery is rental space.
Yep, that's rental space.
So what I'm seeing there is you're adding really 3 additional rental spaces in addition to what's in existence now.
Correct.
And in the numbers, it shows that, where are we here? Paint and varnish has been eliminated. Canvas has been eliminated. Has that just been moved to another location, or what's?
I'm
I think
gonna
it says moved off site, but maybe Will, you may want Lyman to touch base on.
say, yeah, if either Drew or Josh could chime in on.
Yeah. So the Varnish Shop is that Quonset hut currently. So we do like small parts, doors and drawers there, and then everything else gets done on the boats. So the Varnish Shop will combine into where the rig storage is. So what we're doing is that we're going to do a 2 to 3 racks of rig storage, and then there'll still be some space on the C Street side that will house the varnish. We're also thinking about putting the canvas shop. There's a little mezzanine space that we're thinking about putting in there right next to the electronic shop. So right now everything's been moved. Well, the varnish shop hasn't, but they're mostly on the boats. But the canvas shop's been moved over to Will Dennett's space over there where Aurora Sales was. So we're renting space there for the time being until we can get these buildings back up.
Okay, thank you.
And Mark, just so you know, like the office rental space, I think we have 4 or 5 offices that we rent right now. and one is a crew office. And so anyway, that's replacing existing.
Right, those are the brokerage offices.
No, it's actually used to be there used to be Chuck Payne's design offices. They used to rent space from Wayfair, but now it's Ed Joy is there, and then a couple of folks from around town rent space there.
Yeah, okay.
Currently.
Oh, used to.
Okay. used to.
Until the fire.
Yeah.
Until the fire, right. And I just wanted, because I think Will mentioned that those were, I think, new rental spaces, but you had existing rental spaces there, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
You have any other questions, Mark?
Okay, no, I'm okay. I'll let somebody else take the floor next.
Thank you. Anyone else? Matt? Ethan?
Other than the sagacity of putting the crew quarters so close to the distillery, I think there's no questions.
Matt Siegel, do you have any
No.
questions?
Not at this time. I'm going to wait for the public comment first.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
Jeff? Yep, thank you. And Jeff, okay. I don't have any questions at this time. So that being the case, I would make a motion to open the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Matt. All members in favour? Aye. Aye from Jeff, aye from Mark, Ethan, Matt, myself. Okay, 5-0. So as we open up the public hearing, sorry, I'm going back
Rosie?
to my notes here. Yes.
Rosie, I guess
Yeah.
I would just explain, and maybe I can do it for you if you want. Again, iterate how we've taken public comment thus far and the mechanism for people to comment right now, because it's important. If we were in a public space right now, people would be behind us asking you questions or commenting, providing comments based on what they just heard. So I guess.
Well, I'm happy to read the rules of public hearings so everybody's clear.
Okay.
So anybody who's going to comment now, so we have had comments that have been sent to us via email that have been passed along to all planning board members, and we've read them all, and we're also monitoring public media channels, and those comments will also be read out as part of this meeting, and all the comments that have been received in writing will also be read out by Jeremy as part of the public record. So that being said, right, anybody who wishes to speak now, all speakers must state their name, residence, and any connection to the application in order to establish standing. All questions and comments shall be addressed to the board, and any requests for replies shall be made through the chair. And letters from individuals who are not in attendance will be read by Jeremy. So there's going to be two parts to this public hearing. One opportunity to speak will be allowed per speaker during each part of the public hearing. Comments must be relevant to the approval criteria for the application. The chair will exclude any irrelevant or unduly repetitious comments. Do I get a mute button?
You don't.
After comments from the public, the first part of the hearing will be closed so the board can discuss the application with the applicant, and no public comment will be allowed at this time. And then the second part of the public hearing will then be open for final remarks from interested parties with the same rules of order as in the first part. The second part of the public hearing will then be closed, and the board will have its final discussions with the applicant, and the board will then proceed with its deliberations or continue the application to a future date.
Okay.
That.
I think that's perfect.
Okay.
Right now, maybe I guess I'm going to start. I'm going to read, and the board, I think, has received every one of these, but for everyone out there that may be watching and has heard these, I'm going to read these. I'll try to do it as quickly and as talk as succinctly and clearly as possible. This is from Harry Smith. Camden Planning Board, please send the Lyman Morse building plan back to the drawing board. The design does not belong on our beautiful New England Village waterfront. I have lived and created works of art in Camden for the past 50 years. I have headed the Maine State Library Commission and along with Marcia Smith, founded Citizens for Green Camden. I know times are changing. However, our biggest asset is our beautiful Camden Harbor. People come from all over the world to see Camden Harbor. This design will make our harbor like every other commercial harbor in the world. Lyman Morse can design a set of working structures that are in keeping with our New England Village lifestyle. The local drugstore was designed to fit into our plans, so too can Lyman Morse. Thank you, Harry Smith. And Harry Smith is a Camden resident, lives up on Hardin Ave. The next comment would be from Marcia Smith to Camden Planning Board. The buildings proposed by Lyman Morse will destroy the character of Camden. Camden is known all over the world for its beautiful harbor and surroundings. As you know, many businesses in Camden rely on tourists for their income. Visualize yourself as a tourist coming down to the public landing to see the harbor with the park and the windjammers, and then looking across the harbor and seeing what Lyman Morse proposes. Please think seriously about this plan. If approved, it will alter the look and charm, in quotes, of Camden forever. I agree Lyman Morse needs to update their facility, and they can do it so it blends in. The condos as you come into the harbor by boat are bad enough. We don't need more ugly. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the proposed plan. Next, that was from Marcia Smith on Hardin Ave in Camden. And then we have an email from Marina Schaffler. Here's a letter to the comment on the proposed Lyman Morse Harbor development. Please share with the planning board. Dear planning board members, by 2050, the conservative estimate of sea level rise is 1.5 feet, and communities, according to page 72 of the newly completed scientific assessment of climate change and its effects in Maine, should be prepared to manage, in quotes, a 3-foot rise by 2100. Scientists expect the sea level will rise between 3.9 and 8.8 feet. Those figures don't factor in storm surge. To visualize the flooding impact, zoom in on the state's sea level rise viewer and see how at 3.9 feet, the largest and highest Lyman Morse warehouse is partly submerged, with the entire tier of proposed new buildings underwater. In 2017, students at Watershed School did a detailed analysis of how sea level rise would affect Camden and noted that Camden land will be underwater by mid to late century should not be built on now. The Camden Planning Board should follow the students' advice. Our zoning ordinance needs to be updated to reflect sea level rise before any decision is made on proposed waterfront construction. The town should put a moratorium on any waterfront development until that updated zoning ordinance is in place. Approving projects along the shoreline without factoring sea level rise is an invitation to disaster. Marina Schaffler, Camden resident. Okay. And then we have, dear members of the planning board, and this is from Charles Thompson. I'm writing to support Lyman Morse's proposed Inner Harbor project. I have a special interest. My home is close to the project at 19 C Street. I'm an architect and I'm a boat owner. I also have a general understanding of the project. Although I know that construction will cause irritations such as noise and delivery trucks driving back and forth in front of our house, I consider them to be minor and temporary. I know that Lyman Morse is planning advanced construction management strategies to speed construction and get the paint over quickly. The enhancement of facilities will far exceed the trivial annoyance of construction. The result will make an important contribution to Camden. It will be a more beautiful harbor that will increase Camden's international reputation as a destination and improve its ability to care for boaters. It recognizes climate change and the design response to the rising floodplain. It will be more accessible to the public and add to the social functions so crucial to boating and community experience. That's Charles Thompson, 19 C Street, Camden. Okay, next one. This is from Jeffrey Jordan from 6 Ocean Way in Camden. I am writing you in support of the proposed Lyman Morse rebuilding project under consideration for their Inner Harbor property. I'm a neighbor of the boatyard and have found them to be easy to work with. I'm a native of Camden and realize how valuable the yard is in terms of well-paying jobs and associated businesses that it provides for those of us who are here, who are from here and live here all year long. If there is a more formal process for me to submit my letter of support for the project, please let me know and I will do so. Thank you for the time. Jeffrey Jordan, 6 Ocean Way in Camden. This is a letter from Richard Anderson. Dear Planning Board members, I am writing in support of the October 8th, 2020 Lyman Morse Inner Harbor Boatyard Improvement 1 Wayfarer Drive proposal. Approving this proposed improvement is consistent with the current comp plan, which includes the statement, in quotes, the town should dedicate a strong effort to support ongoing commercial marine activities around the harbor, end quotes. The June 14th, 2020 fire at Lyman Morse Wayfarer has rendered much of the current facility unusable. Lyman Morse must make improvements to their facilities. The proposed plan yields aesthetic improvements, public access improvements, and most importantly, operational improvement. The Lyman Morse Wayfarer facility is the last remaining Camden shipbuilding enterprise, which had its beginnings in 1792 and at one time ringed Camden Harbor. The current cluster of Wayfarer buildings evolved over a 150-plus year time span. Inefficiencies and, as we learned, a seeming wind tunnel existed, allowing smoke to spread throughout the entire complex. The proposed plan yields a cohesive set of modern buildings, featured a centralized administration and project and service management areas, conveniently adjacent to the mechanical, cabinetry, electronic, and rigging shops. While no longer a citizen of Camden, I am immediate past Commodore of the Camden Yacht Club and a member of the Camden Rotary, which is currently engaged in an initiative to engage regional economic and workforce development. I urge you to dedicate a strong effort to support ongoing commercial marine activities around Camden Harbor and assure continued economic and workforce development in our region. Respectfully, Richard M. Anderson, 14 Lime Rock Street, Rockport. Town of Camden Planning Board. This is from Chip and Mina Holmes at 40 Washington Street in Camden. Dear Planning Board members, I'm writing in support of the October 2020 Lyman Morse Inner Harbor Boatyard improvements at 1 Wayfarer Drive. Approving the improvements is consistent with the comp plan as well as the state's interest in supporting and protecting our ports and marine industries. The unfortunate fire at Lyman Morse facility caused a large portion of the boat works, in quotes, to be unusable, may become the catalyst for a vastly improved facility, continuing to serve the community at large and boaters from around the world once the proposal has been approved. There's no doubt that over the years, Lyman Morse has provided many good-paying jobs to the local economy, and the proposed improvements will not only provide short-term construction work, but will expand the yard's capacity, likely creating additional job openings. Thank you for your consideration. Clyde B. Holmes III, Chip Holmes. Next one we have from Tyler Smith at 6 C Street in Camden. Dear Camden Planning Board, it is our pleasure to write in support of the redevelopment plan Lyman Morse has presented in their recent site plan application of the town of Camden. As Camden business owners, residents, and C Street neighbors to the Lyman Morse site, we are excited about the proposed renovation and development of the Lyman Morse Yard. For almost 200 years, the boatyards located on and near that site were strictly industrial yards, not welcoming to the public and only focused on the construction or maintenance of vessels. The ability for Lyman Morse to maintain this world-class marine building and repair business while also allowing public access to the grounds will be a great benefit for Camden. We have already had a taste of this development as the Lyman family has incrementally made many improvements to the docks and facilities over the past couple of years. The renovation and rebuilding of the structures will be the last step in this process. As Camden business owners, we understand that a large part of our local economy is fueled by those visiting our quaint downtown, harbor, and scenic coastline. We see the proposed upgrades to the Lyman Morse facilities helping Camden maintain and strengthen its presence in the yachting scene and enticing visitors for years to come. We look forward to appreciating the renovations while walking the docks, enjoying the restaurant, shops, and sharing that side of the harbor with family and friends. The plan proposed by Lyman Morris will be an asset to our community, and we fully support it. That is Tyler and Kristen Smith at 6 C Street in Camden. Bear with me. Hang in there. This is from Roger Moody, 251 Washington Street. Dear Town of Camden Planning Board, dear Planning Board members, I'm writing in support of the Lyman Morris proposal to make boatyard improvements at their property on the east side of Camden's Inner Harbor. The property damage caused by the June 14, 2020 fire has rendered much of the current facility unusable, and Lyman Morris plans to demolish and replace the damaged structures to make long-term operational improvements to support the boatyard and the boat services that they offer. The plan provides for an integrated set of modern buildings featuring spaces for centralized boatyard administration and project and service management areas located adjacent to the mechanical, cabinetry, electronics, and rigging shops. The existing restaurant and distillery would also be accommodated in the new space, along with a lounge area for crews and captains and for possible retail space. The project, too, offers the potential to address the coming impacts of sea level rise. The Lyman plan is consistent with the current harbor section of the Camden's comprehensive plan, which references the state of Maine goal of supporting shoreline management that gives preference to water-dependent uses over other uses. Camden's own goals urge the town to dedicate a strong effort supporting the ongoing commercial marine activities around the harbor. The project has the further advantage of helping to secure Camden's future as a town centered around its harbor, which provides year-round employment and generates significant commercial activity in support of the local economy. It will support Camden as a vibrant, mixed-use, year-round community, providing worthwhile employment and securing its future as a sustainable, balanced place to live. I urge the planning board members to support this Inner Harbor Boatyard project. That's Roger Moody, 251 Washington Street. Okay, this is, dear members of the Camden Planning Board, this is from Brian and Joanne Lightbody at 8 Alden Street. Dear members of the Planning Board, we are writing to you to articulate our support for the Lyman Morris Harbor front overhaul. We feel fortunate to have these business owners as part of our community, and because they have the vision, resources, and commitment to transform this collection of legacy buildings into such an exciting open access complex, the project has the potential to greatly enhance the visual appeal and functionality of the north end of Camden Harbor, creating an attractive and vibrant public space. The boardwalk, courtyards, and green space, restaurant, distillery, and retail space will stimulate additional interest in Camden as a destination for visitors both with and without boats. Some of the major benefits we enjoy as full-time Camden residents are the walkability of the village and resources available to us, including the multitude of dining choices, retail shopping, beautiful library, harbor park and amphitheater, venues at the Opera House, and going down to the harbor and sit on the bench. The transition to the north end of the harbor from a collection of legacy buildings to a beautiful open access complex will significantly enhance the appeal of the village. Respectively yours, Brian and Joanne Lightbody, 8 Alden. That was a long sentence. Okay, you still with me? Yes?
We're here.
Great,
Is
thank
that-
you. All
Thank
right.
you, Jeremy. You did
We're
good.
Thank
I'm
you,
still
Jeremy.
going, I'm not done.
Yeah, go on. Keep going, Jim.
Keep going, okay. This is from Peter and Susan Fitzgerald at 20 C Street. Dear Jeremy, Susan and I have watched the planning board presentations and read the various articles about the Lyman Morris plans for their Wayfarers site with great interest. This is a significant project for Lyman Morris, for Camden, and for the C Street neighborhood. The recent fire at Rumline was unfortunate, but it has provided a great opportunity to upgrade the larger Lyman Morris facilities and continue to enhance Camden's waterfront and the C Street community. While we appreciate that the particular details of the design will continue to evolve and that there will be further discussions regarding associated issues such as the necessary construction disruption to the community, traffic, parking, and the noise potential from the rooftop restaurant area, etc., we support Lyman Morris's efforts, its general design, and its willingness to continue to work cooperatively with the town and the community. Many thanks, Peter and Susan Fitzgerald, 20 C Street, Camden. Okay, next one. This is from, I'm gonna, hold on. Okay, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna just veer into the one I was just going to read was from a property manager for for a property owner, and I'm going to read the property owners first, if that's okay, if that makes sense. This is from Carl Rapaldi, and he owns a property at 31 C Street. I believe he vacation rentals it. My name is Carl Rapaldi. I own the property at 31 C Street, Camden, which is located directly behind the Lyman Morse Boatyard. Sorry, we have met with Josh Moore and Cabot Lyman of Lyman Morse and discussed the new project and site plan with Josh Moore today. I understand that Lyman Morse has shrunk the size of their building plan for the area in front of my property. I have reviewed the new plans posted on the Town of Camden website as part of the November 19th hearing. I am pleased with the new plan and the adherence to a 24-foot height for the building plan for the area in front of my property. However, I am requesting that any landscaping plan for this area in front of my building be restricted in height so as never block the harbor views afforded by my tenants at 31 C Street. My building has been there at 31 C Street since 1885. It had great views of the harbor for most of its existence until Lyman Morse purchased the boatyard from wayfarers. I have historic postcards of the property over several decades which document this fact. For the last 4 years, I have tried to get Lyman Morse to allow me to cut the Norway maples, which grow on their property behind their mass storage building, without any response. These trees currently block the views of the harbor from my tenants. The trees will be removed and the retaining wall at my property with Lyman Morse will be replaced by them per my discussions with Josh Moore and Cabot Lyman. So now, with the new project to be built at the site, there is opportunity to preserve those views. I've discussed the issues with Lyman Morse and understand that they would be cooperative in this request. Lower scale landscape plants would be best to preserve the view. I would appreciate the opportunity to comment on Lyman Morse landscaping plan before it is implemented. Also, I request that Lyman Morse adhere to reasonable established hours for construction so as to keep noise and disruption to a minimum during the lengthy construction timeframe for their project. With the compliance of these requests, I support the Lyman Morse project and wish them the best of luck with their new project. Sincerely yours, Carl Peter Rapaldi.
Hey, Jeremy, just to correct, he met with Drew Lyman, not Cabot Lyman.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. And then I guess I'm going to go to David August. This was submitted. He's Belfast Property Management. He manages the property apparently for Mr. Rapaldi. So I just wanted to get you the property owner's information first, and then I'll read this one. Dear Mr. Martin, the planning board, I'm writing as the property manager for Carl Rapaldi at 31 C Street. Carl and myself are very supportive for this project. One of our main concerns is that the development adheres to the town ordinances that require a view corridor to be maintained for abutting property owners. We have not seen this addressed in the plans documents submitted. Lyman Morse presently owns a failing timber retaining wall that sits right outside the property line for 31 C Street, which was necessary after previous owners of the shipyard cut into the natural slope of the hill that rolled down to the harbor. This wall holds most of our backyards in place. There's presently a red storage building which sits about 10 feet from the retaining wall. The space between the retaining wall and that red building is difficult to access from anywhere but 31 C Street property. Over the years, the owners of 31 C Street have been allowed to maintain the space between the wall and the building to prevent invasive tree growth from destabilizing the wall and to preserve the view corridor. However, Lyman Morse has not allowed us to do so over the past 5 years. In that time, several invasive Norwegian maples have been allowed to grow to the point where they unfortunately destabilized and condemned a large section of that retaining wall to failure. That section is now in imminent need of replacement. We want to ensure that the new development and new retaining wall are properly constructed, and in the event that Lyman Morse does not follow through with these plans, that they are held to the conditions of local ordinances that require the view corridor be maintained. It is our belief, after talking with the PE who designs retaining walls, that deciduous trees cannot be allowed to grow next to retaining walls because of the destabilizing nature of the root systems. We have addressed this issue directly with Lyman Morse over the past several years, but have not seen any commitment yet to fix the problem. We'd ask that the town is provided with a landscape plan for the Lyman Morse property that ensures the retaining wall is properly constructed and landscaped, and that the required view corridor is preserved by way of their appropriate ornamental tree plantings or no plantings being allowed to grow higher than height restrictions for that property. Thank you for your consideration. David August, he's property manager for Carl Rapaldi. And so just so you know, I got Carl's email before David's, just clarifying the record. Next one, this is from Ben Ellison, 2 Bisbee Street, and he is from 2 Bisbee Street and Harbor Float 6A. That's Ben Ellison, a Camden resident, which I kind of like that. Anyway. As a Camden Harbor graybeard who found boats to be his passionate vocation and advocation 50 years ago, and with 2 decades as a member of the Harbor Committee, I can visualize the Lyman Morse rebuild proposal from many angles, and I wholeheartedly support it from all my points of view. I'm pleased to see that many supporting letters already make points I endorse, but I'd like to add these. Number 1, I understand concerns about the project's design aesthetics, but I believe that the magic of Camden Harbor is not so much about how it looks as its elements form a compact theater of interesting human activity. Almost wherever you go around the inner harbor, there's apt to be something lively going on, both in foreground and background, be it boating, working, promenading, or playing in the park. Take away any lively element, like when mostly seasonal condos replaced a small marina, and the overall magic is chipped away, or vice versa, as looks to be the case with Lyman Morse's dense multi-use proposal. Number 2, I've been a boating visitor to many harbors along the East Coast and beyond, and while Camden's has always shown by comparison, I think that the public aspect of Lyman Morse's proposal is unusual and highly valuable to the town. The Lymans are making a big bet on the idea that many discerning professional and recreational yachts people will forego exclusivity for a quality yard, marina, lively with public businesses, and a well-trodden boardwalk. I believe that they're correct business-wise and also 100% authentic about that goal, because that's the sort of boaters they themselves are. Number 3, while I too believe that we must face the facts of rising sea level, it's important to understand that the valuable Maine Geological Survey map presentations are based on astronomical high tide, which is the standard scientific datum, but also the highest tide predicted in the 17-year tidal epoch that covers all possible permutations of the various tide-causing forces. In other words, the flooding you see on the map for various possible sea levels will not be close to an everyday occurrence. And the map also does not factor in the mitigation included in Lyman Morse's plan. Wrapping it all up, I envision Lyman Morse a few decades down the road as a bustling boatyard marina with many good jobs, while also a lively extension of downtown Camden enjoyed by visitors and townspeople who won't much care about the building facades, or even if they have to sometimes wear boots. Sincerely, Ben Ellison, 2 Bisbee Street and Harbor Float 6A, Camden. Next one. This is from John French, 23 John Street in Camden. Just wanted to take this opportunity to show my support. Wayfair has long been a major employer and taxpayer of Camden. This proposed project shows commitment to the future of Camden. The buildings that are there today no longer meet their needs. We need to get behind this project to allow Lyman Morse to continue to grow our working waterfront. Thank you, John French. All right, next one. This is from James and Sherry Deegan, 41 C Street, Camden. Property owners, dear planning board members, as an abutter of the parking area at the end of C Street, I am pleased to see the detail provided in the plans. My concerns are few, and my wish is for the project to be successful. Rooftop bar noise. The new proposed height of the bar will cause significant noise to fill the south end of C Street. The prior bar was in front of and blocked by the buildings. Though we could at times hear crowd noise and music, it was tolerable. By adding a wall on the east side of the rooftop bar area, the noise could be deflected without affecting water views. Pedestrians and vehicles that enter the property from the south end of C Street are funneled into an entrance roadway quite narrower than C Street, which barely affords room for 2 large cars to pass. Pedestrians are often forced to retreat to the adjoining lawns to avoid being struck. A solution would be to make the right-of-way entrance a one-way. There would be ample room for traffic lane and a dedicated pedestrian bike lane that would ensure safe passage that isn't competing with exit flow. Traffic leaving the area would exit onto Steamboat Landing, which is a much larger roadway. This might also encourage some headed north onto Route 1 to use Eaton Ave and free up the proposed congestion at C Street and Route 1. For decades, noise from the upper lot was from approximately 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., but the restaurant created delivery trucks before sunrise and employees closing often around midnight. I'm asking that deliveries be scheduled during regular business hours and employees that close up be provided parking down near the buildings so the conversations, door closings, and car starting activities are not outside our bedroom windows late at night. I'm finally glad to see a buffer between the improved parking lot and my lot. Thank you. I would request that the required planting in this area have a maximum agreed height of 10 feet so as to not block views. Again, I am supportive of this project as this new boatyard continues to work to fit into the existing neighborhood. Sincerely, Jim and Sherry Denigan, and they own property at 41 C Street. Next one. Here we go, getting there. This is from Howard G. Holmes from PG Willie and Company. Dear Camden Planning Board, I am writing you this letter of support today for Lyman Morse in regard to their new reconstruction project on Camden Harbor. As a business owner on the harbor for many years, we have watched the harbor landscape change in different ways. Tourism and commerce are the lifeblood of our community, and we believe that this reconstruction project will help move Camden forward in reasonable and creative way. Further, we offer our support to Lyman Morris and hope that they are able to move forward swiftly and safely to complete this project, as we believe it will have a positive impact on both the harbor community and the town of Camden. Please let us know if you have any questions. Thanks, Howard J. Holmes, PG Willie and Company, Inc. Sorry. All right, I'm going to read this one. This is one I got from an abutting property owner who did ask to be on the Zoom, but has not joined us. And I got this actually prior. This was before the pre-application meeting that we had. So I just felt it important to share with you. And I have not heard from her since. So hold on, let me see if I can find it. We are the owners of 37th Street. It's come to our attention that Lyman will be presenting project plans this Thursday at the town meeting. We will attend. We have concerns about the plans will obstruct our harbor views even further. Could you please tell me what ordinance is in place for construction and how high they can build? Can views be obstructed? ? I'll do research on my side, but wanted to reach out first to begin educating myself. Appreciate your help. That was really directed to me, but wanted to share that with you. Then we have, let's see. Okay, we're getting there. I think I've got two more. Hello, my name is Kathy Young. I grew up in Camden from the age of 3 until college and was away for 30 years. I've been back living in Camden for the last 5 years. My mother lived at 33 C Street for 54 years, and I live there now. The house has been standing for over 100 years. In the early days, the harbor side of the house sloped down to a rocky beach. My parents bought the house in 1969 for $17,000. Dad was in the Coast Guard at Rockland Station running the icebreakers and buoy tenders, while Mom was an elementary school librarian. We had a small shop while I was growing up. I stole tickets on the dock for the Betsalama and crewed on the Rosemary. I kayak many mornings in the season and currently serve on the harbor committee. I can see the action of the harbor out my kitchen window, though not for much longer. And let me tell you what I see is a very busy harbor. Camden has a long history of being considered beautiful. It never stunk like Rockland and Belfast because we were in the boat building business, not the fish and chicken processing business. Our harbor over the years has been rough and untidy, busy and dirty. We are currently still in the top 5 harbors in Maine for water pollution. It has been, and for the most part continues, as a working waterfront. That is part of its charm, along with the historic wooden boats. Right now, there are 6 windjammers, 7 day sailors, a harbor cruise boat, and 11 lobster boats with town of Camden permits. There are other sail and motor tour boats that work from private docks. Residents and seasonal boat owners who rent the town finger floats, outer harbor moorings, and inner harbor slips account for a maximum of 1,499 boats. Every space is rented and each has a waiting list. Kayaks, stand-up paddleboards, the yacht club, sailing school, and cruise ships with their tenders also regularly use the inner and outer harbor. And add to this the new and improved Lyman Morse Wayfair, attracting more and possibly bigger yachts. Lyman Morse also rents inner harbor finger floats. I am not sure how many. And what is known as the rum row at the head of the harbor. My statement today is not against Lyman Morse at Wayfair per se. They're a business in a changing culture. They want to provide a more elegant service with modern buildings that will be adaptable in the future as needs and demands change. They added a restaurant and distillery almost immediately after they took over Wayfair Marine. Those are allowed businesses in the Harbor District in the zoning ordinance. In fact, all manner of commercial enterprise beyond marine is allowed, exactly like what is on the opposite side of the harbor with hotels, bars, breweries, restaurants, and shops. I want to draw attention to residential impact. While Lyman Morse must provide designated parking, it is not worth much if no one can find it. The signage up to now has been inadequate. Quite frankly, when C Street is full of parked cars because the visitors are wandering around looking for how to get down to the restaurant, the street is not safe for two-way road traffic. Some would say that the speed with which this proposal went from presented draft to approval, assuming it gets through the planning board on Thursday, and there's no reason it won't, since they were careful to meet every code, is pro-business and good for Camden. But it seems to me that no one has stopped to reflect very deeply on the impact, good, bad, or indifferent, to the harbor and more importantly, the town with these dramatic and important changes. How many boats literally fit in Camden Harbor at one time? If they're successful and more boats create more pressure on the inner and outer harbor, what will have to give? The windjammers may choose another harbor to navigate. Resident use might be curtailed if slips and docks need to be reduced for maneuverability. I have not been told that any of these things are likely, but I am a realist, and if the harbor is already quite full, more cannot simply be added without consequence. Looked at another way, what happens if the yachts don't come and Lyman Morse decides that they need to rent out more of this new space to other businesses to stay afloat? I was told directly that if they met parking requirements, more restaurants are allowed. Hotel room rental is also allowed if they are not on the ground floor. There is the real possibility that in the future, Camden Harbor will be surrounded with drinking, eating, shopping. We will have transitioned to a 100% recreation and retail and stepped away from authentic working harbor. I care very much about the harbor, and I think you do too. So I'm sharing my experience and insights for your consideration and possibly action. Thank you. That comes from Kathy Young at 33 C Street. I have one last one, and then we'll get to the other one. So bear with me while I pull this one up. And this is from Connie Dean on Erie Avenue. Considering the size of the new restaurant building, I have to ask how this would not have more impact on C Street. And she, in parentheses, Goral Palmer Company findings. Also, the secondary route Cove Road, Erie Ave to Eaton Ave seem to be omitted from Goral Palmer report. Please explain. Thanks. That's all I have in written form. So I guess I'm going to ask Janice, maybe you can read any comments that we've received. Are you there, Janice?
I'm here. The only one I received was that Kathy Young letter, which you already read.
Okay, perfect.
But this guy, the guy at 41 C Street, Jim Deegan.
Yep.
He sent me a question on Zoom. It says, our crew quarters, rental apartments, can they be rented to the public in general? And that's all I've received.
Okay, thank you. Those are comments, and we can chat about those as we move on. Jeannie, anything on YouTube? I think you mentioned something on YouTube earlier.
Yeah, a few.
Okay.
Connie Dean has a question. You read her comment. She says, thought it is 11.5 elevation. And I don't know whether she's talking about the flood elevation. I'm guessing, is that what it is? Different places along there have different
Yeah, Jeannie, I think maybe we should just read it in, and then we'll discuss it after we close the hearing and the public comment period.
All right. Stephen Gold asked, is there still a parts department / chandlery open to the public?
All right, can you clarify what Connie Dean's comment was again?
Thought it is 11.5 elevation question.
That's all she said, 11.5 question?
This came in during the discussion of the elevations, the buildings.
Oh, okay.
There was
Perfect.
discussion about height. Charles Frattini is from 5 Builders, and he wants to know if this is an open bid, so I'm not going to read his statement. I don't think it's appropriate here. Stephen Gold has another question. From the elevation, it seems the restaurant roof height is the same as the existing large service building. Is this above the legal current limit?
Okay, so he's just questioning height. Okay, and we've talked about height. So okay, thank you, Steve.
And Connie Dean just clarified she is talking about flood elevation. So 11.5 flood elevation.
All right.
Elliot Thompson has 2.
Oh, and Elliot's with
questions?
us. Elliot's with us. So Elliot, did you want to chime in, or do you want Jeannie to read your questions? Elliot? Do you want Jeannie to read the questions, or would you like to read them?
Hello. What is life expectancy of the project buildings?
Okay.
And consider this project as part of a whole with the proposed dock expansion. That represents big changes in the neighborhood there.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I have 2 from Ben Ellison. The last is a comment that the project and the new Outer Harbor Marina area that Lyman Morse has discussed can both fit in the harbor. So that comment was directed to Elliot, though.
Okay.
And then,
Oh,
Ben
I want
had
the
one
board-
more comment.
okay. Go ahead.
Ben had one more comment that is appropriate here.
Okay.
Jeremy reads well, but there are a lot of letters, and anyone can download the planning board packet at the town website.
That's fair. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. I wanted to make sure that anyone watching was privy to what everyone submitted and what the board has listened to. So thank you, Ben. I appreciate you wanting to keep me from getting dry mouth. And so thank you. But I'm going to keep reading. If I had them, I'd keep reading. So I don't have any more. And then we have, let me just see, Mr. Jim Deegan is on the phone or on the Zoom. If Jim has any comments that you have not said in your letter, Jim, we can take those now. Okay. I'm going to go to probably, I guess there's 2 other people here. We have 2 select board members and who are members of the town and the public. So I don't know if Allison or Mark, if you guys have comments.
Is that in Mark Putas?
No, I'm sorry, Mark. That's Mark Ratner. Unless you want to be a select board member in Camden.
No, I don't. But I had sent a comment to Ms. Hollingsworth earlier today, and I have not heard that read into the meeting this evening.
Oh. Okay, I'm glad we have you here then. And we've tried our best to get everyone that I think we got everyone read. So I did not see yours. Could you possibly read that to us right now, Mark?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can tell you what the essence of it is.
Okay, really quick, can you tell us where you live? What type of standing?
I I own the property at 38 C Street, and I keep apartment 6 in that building. My business is in Norfolk, Virginia, but I
Okay.
am a longtime property owner in Maine.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
my comment was that this, at least in my environment here in Virginia, this would be considered a change in the character and use of that site. The expansion of the restaurant and the expansion of the distillery and the long-time use as a marine yard. And I don't think the traffic assessment really addressed that. What is the actual impact on the neighbors along C Street from this change in use? That's what it really is. It's a change in the character and the use. I'm not against it, but I don't think enough consideration is being given to that. I believe this is the first application of its kind on this side of the harbor ever. My actual email comment was much less than that, but I believe this is a change in the character and use of that site that has not been given the enough attention.
Okay.
Jeremy,
Yes.
there's a comment from Jim Deegan in chat.
Okay. Let me
Are
find.
crew quarters rental apartments? Can they be rented to the public in general?
Okay, got that. Thank you. And I just want to remind Mark and Jim how this process works. And as because you guys are the only ones here that are kind of participating, but you listen to me read all these letters. They're during the public hearing process. And Jim just commented again. So about will boats be stored in the large parking area? So I just want to comment. We have a period of time that each person that wants to comment can provide comment. And so we're not getting into discussion based on what Mark or Jim just brought up, because that happens once you guys close the public hearing. And people that want to comment have their time to comment. That time is now. It's shortly coming to an end, I think, but we got Allison, I think, that wants to comment. And we'll go from there. Okay?
Okay, was that my go ahead to start commenting, or?
Go ahead.
Okay. So my name is Allison McKellar. I reside at 79 Mechanic Street. I'm also a select board member, which under normal circumstances I wouldn't bring up, but I do think the relevance as a select board, there is relevance as a select board member tonight, because people so often misunderstand the division of responsibilities between the planning board and the select board and town staff and the voters. And so in listening to the comments that have already been presented tonight, it saddens me, and in many ways that the vast majority of the comments are from abutting property owners and people with a personal property interest in this project. And I've received many comments and questions from members of the public who are unlikely to take the time to comment here, quite likely partially because they just don't understand the process, but also because it's usually the people with some kind of vested interest that you get the majority of the comments from on types of forums like this. So I want to start out by saying that I think Camden is just extraordinarily fortunate to have an applicant like Lyman Morse. Since the beginning of time, even since Mary Louise Curtis Bach, we have seen proposals for condos over in this area. Everybody has always recognized just the incredible money-making capacity that condos on this property could have. And even the untouchable Mary Louise Curtis Bach thought that might be a good idea. Drew has not done this. He's been sensitive to the interest in marine use, in business use, and commercial use. We have an applicant here that cares about the community. It's like really the best case scenario. What I see as a little bit of the tragedy here is that the fire has caused a need to do this work much sooner than anybody expected, and has put it in front of a lot of the work that the town is trying to do in updating its comprehensive plan, in planning for sea level rise, in adjusting various zoning ordinances. And so the most troubling part to me was listening to the informational meeting of the planning board and hearing the concerns brought up about sea level rise, and why the buildings were not going to be sited higher. And what I heard Drew say was that he would have loved to be able to do more planning for that, but that the town's ordinance and the height restrictions didn't allow for some of that, best practice type of planning. And so hearing that as a member of the select board, I see that as a serious failure on the part of the town. And we do have mechanisms where we could pull together a special town meeting quickly in order to give the public an opportunity to give the needed flexibility here. We're looking at a huge gift, really, to the town in terms of a willingness to invest millions of dollars into our waterfront, and a willingness to invest in public access and all of really the best case scenarios for Camden. And so for us all to say, gosh, it sure is too bad that the town of Camden can't move faster, because we all have this widespread agreement that we need to plan for sea level rise. But we're going to tie our hands behind our back and say we just can't move quickly enough, so they have to plan for their buildings to be underwater some of the time. I appreciate what Will said. I am a very, very avid tide watcher. I go down every single time that there is a predicted high tide. I document it. I was there on 11/17, which Will says was the highest tide of the year. Not the case. Yes, it was the highest predicted tide with zero wind, storm surge, any of those conditions. That's what the tide chart said would be the highest. It was not even close to the most flooding that we have seen along the shoreline. Not even close. I mean, I could bore you for hours with pictures. Josh actually has stood there with me at a much higher tide just this year in Harbor Park. So, and I know that you guys are aware of this and that you want to do the right thing. I see this as nothing more than a failure on the part of the town of Camden. And I hope that maybe even if this site plan is approved, that there would continue to be opportunities for us to improve upon the plan that you've presented, which, as everybody has said, does a great job of complying with everything that is in the ordinance. So the quick other couple things that I want to bring up are the idea of sensitivity to residential uses in that area. I understand that you've been bombarded by comments from residential property owners, and I share some, but very limited, sympathy for those interests in comparison to the rest of the town of Camden. What we're facing in that area of town, C Street, Eaton Ave, Erie Ave, all of that are some of the fastest rising property values in all of Camden. I have gotten so many messages from people that have been forced out of their properties in that part of town because the values have gone up so substantially, because what used to be a ragtag, loud, industrial working part of our town has turned into an attraction for the rich and famous. We do not have a problem in Camden attracting new people to our town. We don't have a problem with plummeting property values. none of that stuff. We have plenty of places in town where you can be assured a very quiet place to live, a view of the water, all of those things. But we have very few places in town that are sanctuaries for business and industrial uses. So I would beg you not to be overly sensitive to those concerns, even though we all know people and like people who live over there and want them to be happy, that for the good of the rest of the town, we need to have places that are allowed to be noisy. And I really appreciate the the number of jobs that are created by this type of activity and everything that you guys do. I would just hope that you would focus on authenticity and on doing the boat building part very well, not trying too hard to even the character and the facade and all of that stuff and making things look good. The best thing about Camden is to preserve some aspect of authenticity and just being what you are. So I want to really thank you guys for just the type of people that you are. My only hope is that we can try to take just a little bit more time, because we do have people that care, and just to take a little bit more time to see if we can get it even better than you've already planned it. So thank you.
All right, awesome. Anyone else? Any comments that we have not heard from people yet, right? People have had their opportunity to speak. Jeannie, is there any comments from anyone new on the YouTube, or Janice, any new emails?
No new emails.
Okay.
I do. I have Parker Late Jr., Chip Late.
Okay. Yeah, we have not heard from Chip, so let's go. Sure.
Lyman Morse has put together a great project for Camden Harbor. The project will keep the boatyard viable and has been needed for a long time. And then I just got another.
Who's that from?
From a new commenter.
Okay.
Jason, Lochen. Given the amount of glass in the design, has there been consideration given toward the potential impact of glare on the opposite side of the harbor, or the potential of bird strikes? Then he gives his address as 14 Cross Street.
Okay, great. Looks like that's it on public comment. Unless anyone else has got something, but new people, no new people. So I guess we could do a motion. Rosie, probably get a motion to come out of public comment period for some discussion.
Okay, I make a motion to come out of public comment to have some discussion among the planning board. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. We have a Mark. We have an aye from Matt, Jeff, yes, and Ethan, myself. Okay. Okay, board. Do you have any questions for the applicant or any of the commenters?
Rosie, I do.
Yep. Go for it.
Okay. First, I want to thank all the commenters. I think, on balance, they're actually very thoughtful, and I appreciate all the viewpoints that are raised. In particular, though, I wanted to focus on the letter from Marina Schoeffler, and thank her for laying out things so well and detailed on the sea level rise issue. And thanks also to the Watershed School students for their efforts and their study, and also to Allison for her brief summary of some of the issues that surround it. And I want to echo some of what Allison said. I'm in support of the project. I'm in support of, I think we're really fortunate to have something like this happening here in Camden and keeping this a working waterfront. And I know that the applicant has really put a lot of effort into to making this design work, both for them and for the community, and I appreciate that. But in echoing Allison's comments, the thing that I'm most concerned about is this idea of the rush of the project, and how I know the fire has accelerated it, and I know that we are we're dealing with an issue, sea level rise, that is somewhat uncertain to some people. But if we are to look at all the studies that have been done, we really are talking about approving a project that in the millions of dollars that could be underwater in 50 years or 100 years. And so that's where the pause comes from. And I agree with Allison that it's not a failure on the applicant's part, but it's a failure on the town of Camden, and the inability to look at the prospective sea level rise and address that in the zoning ordinance itself. When I get an answer to my questions at the site walk and the preview hearing, that the reason why we can't raise it any higher from the boardwalk is the floodplain levels is because of the height ordinance. And I know that we do have some mechanisms, whether it's even a variance, which I know are infrequently granted, but in a project like this is a possible application for this project. Or as Allison has admitted or acknowledged, that there's a chance for calling a special town meeting and addressing this in the zoning ordinance itself. So I guess, but I do actually have a question after I get off my soapbox for the applicant, and I wanted to ask you specifically what steps you have taken to look at the sea level rise issue, how much you have looked at the studies that were cited by Marina Schofler in her letter, which I think are really interesting and helpful. If you've gone onto those sites, it reviewed the projected sea level rise, clicked on the buttons that say 3.6, 8.6, 2 whatever, and see how far underwater your buildings are going to be in 20 or 50 years or 100 years, and whether you've looked at the watershed study, and finally, if you've accounted for all of those things in your project, because as an investor in something, you might want to be certain that you're not going to be facing loss. And I'm just curious to hear from the applicant specifically on those issues.
Yeah, so you guys are all, you're preaching to the choir right now, because my father and I take that stuff seriously, and we have looked into that. We're, like you guys know, we're restricted in what we can do there. What we are thinking at this point is things are going to change. 50 years from now, things are going to change. We're going to have new rules, new ordinances, most likely on this stuff. There's breakwater proposals for the town of Camden. There's a lot of stuff over the next 50 years that can affect, how we build things in the future. At this moment, while I know it seems fast, it's not that fast. And I think, what I proposed to the group, and this is a little out there, but my father and I looked at this, is can we put these buildings in, and I asked this of the architects and the construction management team, could we, figure out a way that these buildings can move at some point in their life? And that's not something we can take too seriously right now, because the cost of that would probably shut this thing down. But I just wanted to say that because of how serious we're taking that. So, Will and I have looked at that a lot. We respect that, enormously. I just feel that, as a town, as a community on the coast, and with those issues you're talking about, we got to take it seriously. I just don't, that's a plan that should take not a month to 6 months to a year. That should be a plan. Because as you guys know, once you change that ordinance to go up higher, that's not going to make any of those neighbors any happier. I can tell you that. So there's going to be a lot of concern, questions. It needs to be really thought out. And I think, for the next year to year and a half here, we got to get something up and running so we can be a viable boatyard. If it wasn't a smoke damaged building, it wouldn't be what we're talking about. Our occupancy is not there anymore, so we have to get this thing cooking. But we take it seriously. We've looked into it, and I think there's a lot of opportunity, regardless of what we do here today, for the future that I'd love to be a part of, and we can figure out how to kind of improve that waterfront side somehow. And I don't have the answer, to be honest, Ethan. But I do respect what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, and Drew, thank you. I really do appreciate that, and I know you guys are coming from the right place. But I did ask specifically whether you guys consulted those studies, and whether you've looked at the projection maps, and specifically also what mitigation factors you may have put into place to account for any flooding or sea level rise.
Well, I think Will can, we are going up, right? Everything's going up, so that helps. I've looked at those studies way before this project. So when I was on the harbor committee with Ben and the whole team there, we looked at a lot of that, especially on the public landing side, right? So you guys have a project there that I looked at with the harbor committee, and I know there's a lot of conversation on what needs to happen there with the sea level rise. The reality is, I think we're going up. We, Rumline never flooded currently. Now I know 50 years from now it's a different conversation, but yeah, I guess the short answer, Ethan, is yes. I've looked at it. I've looked at it way before this stuff, and especially when I was on the harbor committee. But I think we've got a good plan. I've got some comfort that this thing will be viable for a long time, and then when that time comes that it's not, we're going to have to look at sumps and things like that hopefully technology's changed enough, in 20, 30 years. So yeah, we did look at it, Ethan. Yeah.
Okay. And Will, can you maybe address any of the mitigation issues?
As far as mitigation issues, one thing that we're doing is going to be reinforcing the earth there. I mean, that entire area is fill. Anybody that's looked at any old photos of the area knows that's fill behind a bulkhead wall. And so we're going to reinforce the bulkhead wall and provide some additional supports as part of our earthwork project before the reconstruction starts. And then we're also going to be doing stone piles. Basically, you create a big grid and drill holes down into the earth and then pack them with stone to create a much more stable subsurface so that we can bring the grade up and have it be stable. Right now, the geotechnical report showed that there was all kinds of stuff buried there, things that are probably continuing to decay, things that are going to compress over time if we put much load on them. And these buildings aren't huge, and they're only 2-story buildings. So there's not a big amount of weight, but still, we didn't want them settling inconsistently. So we are putting together a pretty significant plan to reinforce basically the entire area underneath these buildings, and then bringing that grade up so that we can then put a concrete foundation, a normal footing and wall up to that first floor elevation, and then there'll be a concrete slab for most of those floors. So, I mean, it's a pretty significant undertaking to make sure that we're sitting on stable ground and that they're supported well and not going to be damaged by floodwaters, at least for the foreseeable future, clearly. I mean, we're going up 4 feet above, what are the normal high tides now? And I understand what Allison was saying about storm surge. The other day was a perfectly calm day. There wasn't barely a ripple in the harbor. So when there's storm surge or wave action, that definitely has an impact. I think we're doing a lot to reinforce the ground there and make sure these buildings are on stable ground.
Yeah, and I appreciate the stable ground part, but and I know it's very difficult to drain into a full tank, but is there any sort of mitigation for just drainage in general around the buildings that would address these issues?
I'm not sure what you mean by drainage around the buildings. I mean, we're putting some drainage in, but I mean, if the area is flooded, then the outlets to those drains are going to be below water.
Well, that was right. That was my point to the draining into a full tank. So I'm just wondering, is there any other means to address that with current technology? I mean,
not really. I mean, if the water all around you is there right now, there's not a lot we can do. I mean, the yard doesn't typically flood now, but yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the answer would be, Ethan.
Okay.
Other than lifting everything and filling it.
Right. Okay, I think that's really the extent of my comments for now on that, or questions anyway.
Thank you, Ethan. Any other board members who have questions or comments? Jeff, Matt, Mark? Yes, Mark.
I had a couple things in response to the letters we received. And Jeremy, maybe you can help me with this one. There was a reference to the ordinance protecting view corridors.
Okay, yep.
Can you,
I
I'm
sure
trying to
can.
find that. I don't see it.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because and I think I've never spoken with the property manager who sent that email in, and he sent it in. There is no requirement for a view corridor from private property. There is no zoning ordinance amendment or zoning ordinance provision that requires that. There is a provision, it's if you look in the development tables, for a corridor from town right of way. And so if you remember, we looked at it because it was an issue on the head of the harbor project. We looked at the view corridor because it's a view corridor from the right of way. The only right of way that this property has adjacent to it is at their first entrance on C Street, off of C Street, right? You come down the hill towards the rigging shop, I believe, right? Drew and Will. That's the right of way that is adjacent to this property. That area has an existing view shed. That area will continue to have that same existing view shed. Now, if Lyman Morse proposed to put a building smack dab in the middle of that area where you came down the hill, that's a view shed area that can't be interrupted. But they're not proposing that. No property has a right to their view. And it's an interesting, you read and you kind of saw it in the letters. They didn't want, they want to protect their view, but they make sure that nothing will happen to impede their view. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but there is no requirement, Mark, from those properties to have a view corridor or that they have a right to a view from the property, unless they have obtained a view easement from the subject property owner, which there are no view easements attached to this property. So there is no requirement. Does that clarify, Mark?
Great, thank you. Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
In essence, it's really it's to protect the public's view, not private property views.
Jeremy, piggybacking from that, and also Will, there were a number of comments from the public about this quote unquote retaining wall, which I hadn't seen as we were doing our site walk, and concerns about evasive, they were referring to the Norwegian maples and erosion. Is that something that's being addressed? And again, I'm sorry if you had already commented on that earlier. I just missed it.
No. If I'm going to just share my screen again real quick so I can point out where those are. Can everybody see the plan now?
No.
All right. So there's currently a retaining wall that runs right along this property line, which is the westerly property line of the C Street residence. And that wall is just on the Lyman Morse side. And these symbols are the trees that they're referring to that are right now behind the existing building. And so that area has kind of fallen into disrepair, and it's been part of the plan all along to change that. So that, and the retaining wall is not real tall. It's only going to be about 4 feet at the highest point. And that wooden retaining wall is going to be replaced with a precast, most likely a precast block wall. And those invasive trees will all be removed.
And then piggybacking onto Ethan, at that point, what's our elevation? I'm trying to see on the diagram. Are we up there? So again, if say, Drew, that it does flood at that point, that we're not having erosion coming from that. I mean, it's one thing to flood the bottom of the new dining and the new distillery, which would be rotten. But what's the height back there? Is there a slope?
In this area right here?
No, up where that retaining wall is. Yeah, all in there.
Yeah, so the elevation down in here is 11, right. And on the top of the wall right here, it's 15.
Oh, good. Okay. So we're up
And it stays about that way as you come along the backside here. And then they quickly climb to an elevation. I mean, C Street is up at like, what is that, 20, 28, 29, 30? But there's a pretty big climb from the back of the Lyman Morse property up to C Street.
And do you think, again, that particular area, right where you had the retaining wall, in Ethan Shaw's, post-apocalyptic analysis, where it's flooding, which is a possibility, is that going to be able to hold back erosion sufficiently?
For the retaining wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the retaining wall is got load behind it already, and so if there's water on the front side, it'll just equalize.
That's okay. That's what I was looking to hear. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions, Matt?
No, I previously, you did a superb job in terms of everyone discussing the flood. I mean, you saw me, Rosie, walking around that area going, holy cow, what happens when it floods? So I'm happy to hear, Drew, that you've certainly assessed the risk of that and made it part of your decision-making. My initial concern, Drew, was that, we were, as Allison said, moving really fast through this, and that somehow the risk assessment had been pushed a little bit to the back burner. But, and it was important that both you and Cabot are going into this with, your eyes wide open, that you see, okay, we're doing this. We want to keep this business afloat, no pun intended, but we want to keep this business going. And we have assessed the risk. If we're going to invest, obviously a major investment in the waterfront. So it was really important to hear you, Drew, articulate the fact that you've assessed this risk. And Will, again, to the concerns of Ethan, that given the conditions that we have in terms of our ordinances, we're going up as high as we can, as someone would say, and within the height requirements, the height limitations of the current ordinance, to address Allison's comments earlier. So Rosie, those were my big two. So thank you for letting me just ask those questions, and ready to move on.
Thank you, Matt. Any other questions? Jeff, do you have questions?
Yeah, well, not really questions, just more comments. So it doesn't look like we have a big net increase in impervious space. But in your statement, you're not really saying how much we're changing. So we're just kind of going on faith that there is no big increase in impervious space. So I just was hoping that, Will, maybe you could just generally comment, say there's no increase in impervious space where you are at this one catch basin. I think on the plan it says that the invert in is 6-inch and the invert out is 12-inch. So I'd assume just one 12-inch pipe.
Yeah, the only pipe we've added is that one catch basin one.
Yep.
Down at the north end. And that's because this whole area wanted to be relatively flat for when they have the large, mass that can be 180, 200 feet long. And so that was the goal there. And so to get the water out of this area, we had to put something in there. Yep. We actually tried to add some green space down here, which didn't exist before. Right now, underneath the wooden portion of it, that's a deck, really. It's not on grade. There's a space under there that you can actually access, and the grade differs under there. So we're in the process of trying to get a little better mapping of what the elevations are under there, as much to be able to tell contractors what they're going to have to do for grading. But right now that area is a deck, and so the water just goes in underneath there and has to infiltrate in. That bulkhead is not watertight, so the tide, you can actually hear water coming through with the portion that's granite and leaving again. And so our thought is that most of this deck area and boardwalk area is still going to be like that. It's going to be a deck that's just ground underneath it. Water will be able to go through. The grass area will be filling up and creating that green space. So that's going to be some fill area. There'll be a little bit of retaining in order to make that happen. So we're definitely not increasing impervious area. I wouldn't say we're decreasing it greatly, just really these little green spaces.
That's good to hear. That's always
Yep.
a good thing in a project when we decrease our impervious space.
Yep.
And Will, what's the soil depth of those open that you're just circling, the green spaces? Is that 12 inches? What goes down in terms of absorption?
Well, right, we haven't actually detailed it yet, but yeah, we're gonna have some good organics in order for those to stay green. But underneath there is just a lot of fill.
Right. Correct.
But right where I've got my, like right in here, there's probably 4 or 5 feet of a space below the deck at that location. And so that's what we're trying to figure out is what those we got to get under there to do some measurements to figure out the actual depths to determine what elevation it needs to be brought up to for the footings, and then how we're going to hold the soil in for these areas that we want green space.
Right. Holy cow. Quite the engineering feat.
Yeah, that could be a lot of fill.
Well, the other thing that's happening too is that this bulkhead is a sheet pile. At the north end, the bulkhead is a granite wall. And as you come south, it turns into a sheet pile wall. And that sheet pile wall rotated a few years back. And so it's not perfectly plumb anymore. And some of that is because there wasn't enough soil depth for them to put some dead men back high enough. So we're going to correct that as part of this project and do some reinforcing of that to make sure that doesn't continue to move. So there is a lot going on underneath there. And there's, as I was mentioning with Ethan's question, there's a lot of earthwork and ground improvement work that needs to happen that, will never be seen again once we're done. And hopefully it doesn't have to be touched for a long time, but there is a lot going on.
And based on the public comment, Will, what's the timetable for that type of work, just generally? And I don't want to hold you to it because I know that's not part of our purview, but in terms of that,
like the schedule is, Drew's driving us hard. We're all working hard to try to get everything done and get these plans going. I think the hope is that the demolition is going to start sometime between now and spring. And once we start, we'll keep right on it going until we're done. It's going to be a 12 to 16 month construction process.
And will, of that 12 to 16 month, only to address some of the concerns of the C Street, how much of that is the heavy machinery with this massive reinforcement and fill in terms of the base?
That initial work is probably for a good 4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, once it's demoed and everything is taken out of there, there's only a few contractors that do this type of earthwork stabilization, and they're going to come in and get out. I mean, they go right at it. So I think that's what we've heard from the geotechnical engineer is that it's about a 6-week window that they're going to need to do this work.
Thank you.
After that 6 weeks, hopefully we're ready to go start building foundations and going up.
So, well, on this work, I mean, this is all done over the road, right? There's no barge that can come in and do any of that work.
No, it's all land-based.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from planning board members?
And I do want to address parking because we did have a comment about traffic, and it looks as though you need 128 spaces for your proposed uses, and you've MacGyvered 128 spaces. So it's pretty impressive that you squeaked them out, and I'm just wondering if you're going to put in any Tesla charging stations, Drew, or anything like that.
They actually have some now, and
they're already there, man.
I have to tell you, Jeff, I actually told everybody here, I said, come on, you've got to come up with one more space. To have it be exactly 128 is too much of a coincidence. But, that's what we came up with. And as I mentioned in my submission, a lot of the staff park over in the bean yard. We didn't want to mix that in and confuse everything. We were able to show that we have the parking that the ordinance requires within the property that we're talking about, but they do utilize the bean yard for a lot of overflow parking.
Yeah. All right, good job. This is a good layout.
And segueing from it, hey, Rosie, is this the time? A lot of the public comment were about, and Jeremy as well, about the traffic and the change in traffic patterns. And I know there was the GP report that we all read, the Palmer report. Rosie, is this the time? Again, I'm not an expert in this, but it was
These
definitely.
are questions. If you don't bring them up, I'm going to just ask the board people to address the things that people have asked about. So
That'd be great.
Jeremy.
Yep.
Yes.
I just want you to remember, when you are asking questions, they should help formulate how you make a decision, right? And so in your approval criteria, which I assume Goro Palmer reviewed, it does talk about vehicular access, parking, and circulation. And then one of the sections is talking about street serving the site shall be adequate. So it's a good point. And I just wanted to, because you're going to have to rule on that. And in order to rule on that, I know you've accepted everything that they submitted as evidence, but it's a good time to ask that type of question, because you're going to have to make a finding on that fact.
Yep.
So you may want to ask Will and the consultant to speak to that.
Matt, did you specifically?
Rosie, no, I think what I'll do is I'll piggyback off of yours, because your eyes went up like you were ready. So I'll just piggyback off of you. Exactly. I think you're ready as well. And if there's something else, I'll come behind you with a follow-up question.
Fantastic. Okay, so just some of the things that I heard questions about and concerns in terms of parking were, would it be better to have a one-way right of way because there's a bit of a bottleneck coming in? A delivery is going to be during regular business hours. Is there going to be employee parking by the buildings? And a kind of long-term concern about lots of parking that seems to be happening along Street, or certainly was doing. They all seem to be a constellation of parking questions. Could Drew or Will speak to those?
Well, we've definitely talked about, certainly let Drew jump in, but we've definitely talked about talking to the town about improving signage. We've got a lot of signs that are internal to the property, but the town has a sign ordinance and kind of controls what we're allowed to do anywhere else. So we're certainly willing to work with, Jeremy in the planning office and talk about what might be helpful as you come down Atlantic, as you come down C Street, in order to direct people to the right locations. I mean, it's to everybody's benefit to have people know where we want them to go and where they want to go. So there's no opposition on our part to try to develop a better way to direct people. The one way in, I'm assuming they're talking from right here, which is where the Lyman West property starts. That's not something we've discussed before. I think that we'd want to be careful about creating one ways. That I'm always a little leery about that, creating problems somewhere else. I could certainly let Randy mention anything comments he has. It's not something we've talked about or looked at, so it would be something that I would want to step back and kind of look at the pros and cons and see if that really has an overall benefit. Parking, as far as next to the buildings, I don't remember that one, Rosie, or what the specific question was.
I think it was really a concern about employees getting done their shift at the restaurant late at night. Oh. And then as they were locking up and the noise just being around the building, and it was a noise impact issue as much as anything else.
For parking up in this area.
So.
Right.
I just wanted to raise these issues because these are concerns that neighbors have.
I think the issue is staff parking on C Street and them getting out of work and opening their doors in front of the woman's windows. And so that'd be a summertime issue, is my understanding.
Well, we're certainly generating much clearer and more defined areas to park. So there really is no reason for employees parking on C Street. Everything should be on site.
Okay, and I know some of the other businesses in town encourage their employees to park in the right places, because if they don't park in the right places, it causes trouble in other areas. So I'm sure that could be something that could be an operational piece that happened if needed. If employees need to be reminded not to park on C Street.
Right, and those 15 spaces that are down at the north end are totally new on-site parking. Yeah. So, I mean, there's an advantage to having those at that location.
Sure. Thank you. Deliveries during business hours? somebody would like a reassurance that the deliveries are going to be during regular business hours. Is that something Drew could? What's regular business hours? It depends on the profession, doesn't it?
It really, I mean, that's a hard thing to comment on. I mean, our hours are 7 to, you name it. We'll haul boats right up till dark in the summer if we have to in an emergency situation. So, you know, I think for delivery trucks for the restaurant owners, yeah, I mean, we certainly don't want them coming in before where are they going to put the stuff? The buildings are locked. So I'm not sure that happens a lot, to be honest, but you know,
Okay.
with and things like that, maybe it did. I'm not really sure how to kind of comment on that.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, well, you know,
Yeah, just wanted to, it's been raised, so I didn't know if it was an issue or not, but
Yeah.
okay. Interestingly, one of the pieces was about having a full harbour, and if your renovations and expansions were going to attract more boats to an already full harbour, and what that was, if that was going to create any unforeseen consequences. What are your thoughts on that, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, this is a pretty easy thing for me to say, but everything I'm doing is trying to increase the energy and the boats in the harbor. Our goal is, you know, you have a great harbor master in Steve Pixley. He's going to tell me what I can and can't do there, right? You know, take the Camden Classics Cup that we're putting on. You know, those docks, you know, were empty for years, and at times were booked in the early 80s, and then it went through a slower period. And my goal has been to go, you know, I hope everybody enjoys it, but we have some beautiful boats go 4, sometimes 5 rafted up on those docks. And what we do is we work with the windjammers, we work with Steve, we communicate with everybody as much as possible to say, hey, are we good here? Do you have enough room to get through? The good part is, of course, we're off racing when they come in. So there's a whole coordination issue that happens with the harbor master. You know, I mean, it's a busy harbor, but that's what I love about it. I mean, it's a bit of a perspective thing. If you want it empty, that's not what I want. But you know, we're in a business to bring some boats here and keep working on them. And so I think we'll make sure it's within the rules. And you know, we certainly don't want it to overcrowded, so our boats, you know, our customers can't get out of the harbor. That would be the last thing. And the idea of, you know, I think you said this about the windjammers leaving. That would be the last thing I'd want. You know, I talk with the windjammers a fair amount, and Josh helps me as well. But you know, we're trying to support them with parking in our sheds, which they do each summer. You know, we're more supportive. I hope they understand this, that we're about a bigger supporter of those windjammers of anybody. So we certainly don't want to detract from that, and any other boats coming in the harbor. That's not our goal, you know. So does that help?
Thank you. Yeah, Mark seemed to have. Did you have something to say?
I did. I just wanted to add to that. You know, for a long time, I think the town has studied Wayfair Marine and had their eyes on it, and the interest has always been to maintain a boatyard. We fought the development of condominiums over there, and so to address those questions, yes, you know, the town really has thought long and hard about the growth of Wayfair Marine or Lyman Morris. And as far as I can see, that's what everybody has been looking for. So while I'm talking, I'd like to bring up, maybe Jeremy, you can help me with this again, the restaurant for the rooftop dining. Is that with the approval of this project, is that approval of that business, or will they need a separate business
Sure.
operating?
Sure. Good question. What you're approving is you're approving a site plan application for these uses to happen there. there's a lot of things that people need to go through depending on the type of business, what type of permitting and licensing that someone needs to actually do once they get through this process. For instance, well, we all know, and there's a permit, I think it's already been, the permit by rule for DEP's already come in, but there's already state fire marshal approval is required for the building. So this is not, they don't, once they do this, they can't just tomorrow come in, get a permit and start putting a restaurant up there. They have to go through state fire marshal approval for the type of use and meet the life safety code and all of the fire codes. That's for egress and sprinkler protection and all that. They have to come into the code office. They got to go through the building, review process. So they got to get their architects on board to make sure it meets all of the building code and life safety requirements. And then they go to the select board as well as the state for what locally we call the Vittler's license. And so restaurants have an annual license that they need to obtain from not only the state, but the town as well. And that's a public hearing process for the liquor and the Vittler's license they need as well. And that goes through the town annually. The select board has to approve every Vittler's license and every liquor license as well. They technically don't approve liquor licenses. They get the informal okay from the local municipality, and then they take that to the state of Maine, and then the state gives them a liquor license. So there's a lot of reviews that have to go, and restaurants and liquor do annual reviews and annual licensing. You guys probably don't recall this, but we have one of the restaurants on the other side of the harbor had an issue with smoke when they were burning their wood-fired grill. That issue came to a head at not a bad head, but it came to a head at a select board meeting during a public hearing. And they continued, I think they postponed, or I think they conditioned their Vittler's license for, 30 days for them to resolve, I think it was 60 days, to resolve some smoke issues that were coming out of one of their wood-fired, ovens. And they had to do some work up on the exhaust to make sure that wasn't impacting adjacent businesses and negatively impacting the community. So there is an annual review that gets, you find this with, bars that are more restaurant and bars that are more bar-y. Noise complaints come into the town, they come into the select board, and those are discussed at the select board review oftentimes. So if that's the question you're asking, Mark, we're about use kind of, that's what I'd have to say. Is that where you're getting?
Well, that's pretty close. My concerns there, I think the neighborhood concerns would be the rooftop dining and just the overall increased size of the restaurant. And so it's my understanding, when this project is approved, yes, we have approved the rooftop dining, and we have approved the whatever square foot building for a restaurant.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, and based
understand too that if someone wanted to build a building that was the entire size of this and it was one huge restaurant, if they could meet all the traffic requirements, at that point, I think it would trip some sort of traffic permit, but they could do it. And you meet the standards, They do meet the parking requirements, and all of that. And in this case, I guess I would reference back to, I think it's Randy Dutton, who's the traffic engineer from Goral Palmer, when, there was questions, and I'm just bringing it back up. There was questions about the restaurant, the increase in restaurant. Does that increase impacts on side streets like C Street? So, does that help, Mark?
It does, yes.
Okay.
Rosie, can we walk that back just a couple of steps in terms of design and something that might be addressed to Drew and Greenspur? One of the comments came in was about, again, noise from that rooftop. Drew, have you, in part of the design and talking with the architects, addressed some kind of retractable roof? Again, we have this faux pitch on either end of the primary structure. Has there been any discussion of putting I remember the letter, Rosie, I said, talked about specifically some kind of rooftop on the east side of the building.
I think they were just, I think they mentioned possibly some kind of a wall. I don't think there was any kind of a rooftop.
I think he was
discussed
referring,
there.
I think he was referring to a wall on the east side of that building in order to, I think the east side, in order to act as a
Barrier.
barrier
Noise buffer.
to deflect sound.
But Drew, in terms of design, has anyone talked about any kind of retractable roof that could be lowered, or I don't know. I know it ain't cheap, but boy, it
Can I comment on that?
Jeremy?
Can I comment on that? That would turn into a structure, and all of a sudden we don't meet the height requirements anymore. So what they're allowed to do is they're allowed to have, I think what we call them is incidental protrusions in our height definition. And you're allowed to have an incidental protrusion of 5% of the area of that roof. So that's all they're allowed to go higher than what the building height maximum is. So they've got a little bit of wiggle room. I assume, we're going to have a little bit of probably some equipment up there, some, mechanical equipment like everyone has. And then you have these faux, building features. So they've got to stay within the 5%. If there's a way that they can stay within 5% and put something on that side of the wall, on that side of the building, that would make sense to me, as long as they can stay within the 5% and get everything that they're looking for on the roof.
But Jeremy, how does that work in terms of, again, different than a barrier, again, some kind of retractable, if you put an I-beam across that, again, I'm not an engineer, but, you see what I'm saying? To Will or to Drew, to the architects?
Yeah. Can you guys, I just put up one of the elevations looking at the restaurant. And
there it is. Yep.
I brought that view up so that you can see that the actual roof deck itself is below the building one.
Okay.
So a good portion of that roof deck is going to have a wall. It's really just this little section on the end that doesn't.
So it might do dual purpose, this side of the existing structure.
Well, that's what I thought all along, is that the existing building is going to help to block a lot of the sound from up there.
I think the sounds are not I think it's a concern now, but I think once this is in place, I think that will be that worry will be satiated or eased, because Drew and the Lymas, they have people staying in the boats right there, and these people in these super high-end boats don't want to be next to a noisy bar. And then if there was noisy bar and just mess in the morning, like, it wouldn't be an efficient boatyard. So I only see this maybe like in the Classics Cup and during a celebration time, it being kind of noisy. But even still, it's not going to be past midnight, crazy noisy like a Cuzzies would be. So I get the feeling that, out of respect for their own clients staying in their own yachts right next door, that they're going to want to keep the noise to a minimum as well.
And Drew, does that vibe? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, you had a little voiceover there, but listen, I think that big building is your big noise blocker. But Jeff is actually absolutely right. That's something we had lengthy discussions around on Rumline is, I mean, you guys recall he had bands come in, and we had to kind of put that, stop that, which I liked it, but because of the noise and things like that. So, either way, I think, it's a restaurant, it's got some bars, and but that building really is the noise blocker in my opinion.
And then it circles back, Jeremy, also to ordinances on noise. I mean, at that point, so.
Yeah, we do have a noise ordinance, and we also can have the annual business licensing that someone goes through. So if some restaurant or a facility became a real problem, I will tell you, I mean, who hears about it first is Audra and I and the select board immediately. And then it comes up at their annual licensing. And then, if it's a real problem and the police comment on it on every application, the fire department comment on every application. So if the police are going there routinely because of noise complaints, or, you know, people are fighting and there's just loud, you know, rowdy behavior, the police will respond. The police will identify that to the select board as an issue. And that's how those kinds of things are addressed. It really hasn't been a huge problem as of late, but it always can be addressed annually.
Rosie, do you think that addresses the concern of those 3 letters?
I think that big shed building is going to be a very effective blocker of sound. I mean, there's, you know, I mean, it does, you know, the only place it's going to carry is across the harbour, you know, and we've already got a rooftop bar on the other side of the harbour. So I think that will be an effective blocker. And if there's too much noise, the neighbours have the option of calling the police, which people do in town when there's too much noise. So and the police show up and deal with it. So and I think we have a mechanism in place to make sure that it remains a reasonable place to live and that these 2 uses can coexist harmoniously.
Yep. Thanks, Rosie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's just one other point I wanted to touch back on was the screening and between the neighbors. You know, the request was that it be limited to the height of the buildings to protect their view. Is there anything we could do or would want to do in regards to that?
Jeremy.
I don't think any. Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but when those trees come out, there's no trees going back there. Are they proposed to go back?
Well, there's not a lot of room there to put anything of much size. We have talked about trying to put something along the top just to add a little more visual screen, but nothing that's going to grow tall.
Sounds like a good compromise, Will.
But you're right, there's not a lot of room there. And a lot of the vegetation that's going to remain is actually on the neighbor's property. So they'll have control over that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time from planning board members? Jeremy?
If we don't have any questions, we did get a few more comments, so we can maybe open up for a second public comment period really quickly, and then
Yep.
jump back out of it, and then ask the applicant to address those.
Sure. So can I make a motion to reopen the public hearing? Do I have a second? Second in Matt. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Jeremy, Ethan, Matt, myself. Okay. So public hearing open. Back up. Jeremy, how about it?
And I'm gonna, I think, go to Jeannie. Are you on with us?
Yes, I am.
Do you mind reading those? I think you got a couple of comments on YouTube about traffic or whether or not it was going to be discussed. Can you read those?
I do. Connie Dean wants Goro Palmer's representative to address the increase in traffic resulting from the expansion of the restaurant that goes down and around and ends up on Eaton. So when the restaurant was there before, traffic increase resulted just from the old restaurant. They're worried about the increase in size of the new one and wonders if Goro Palmer even looked at that traffic pattern.
Okay, any more comments?
Again, about the restaurant staff.
Is this from a new person, Jeannie?
Yes, this is Barb O, but that's all I have.
Okay.
And she's talking about when the restaurant staff is arriving and leaving and parking. So, I mean, that's just.
Can you read verbatim what she said, Jeannie?
Most of the restaurant staff is arriving when the LMB, I don't know what that is, Boatyard, Lyman Morse Boatyard staff is leaving. So many of them park in the same places that LMB employees used during the day, across from the condos.
Okay. Any more?
Well, Connie Dean is the one who's asking about the traffic, and I'm not sure.
Right.
which question she wanted answered. I'm sorry,
No, I get it.
maybe,
I guess once we'll come out of, once we come out of public comment period, the board can ask, probably Randy Dutton to comment on that. No more comments. It doesn't, Rosie, you want to,
Yeah, is there anybody in the room, in the public, who wants to comment? Do they have anything extra to add? I'm not seeing anything. Jeannie?
no more.
No more? Okay.
can we, hold on one second.
Yeah.
Jan, can we, unmute Mark, and Jim Deegan to see if they have any new comments, nothing about that they've commented prior? Just unmute them so they can respond to my question. Oh, Jim and Mark, we're going to try to unmute you guys for a second. If you have any new questions of the board, not the same questions you've asked prior.
Which Mark?
I'm going to say, Mark, I think that's you. Putasi, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
It's Putas. No,
Okay.
I don't think the parking issue has been adequately addressed. I mean, you're really more than tripling the size of those
Understood.
uses there. Yeah.
Understood. And I think we're going to get into that after this
Hey,
public.
Jeremy, this is Ethan. I just point out that we still have the one drawing up from Will's screen. Maybe we can pull that down.
Okay.
I'd like to add one thing. Isn't that gravel lot right now considered a pervious area? The parking lot?
No, Mark, no, that's all impervious. Gravel is impervious, and we don't have a standard.
Okay, I don't know the standard. I just wondered because it's being paved, so that's a change. But
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
care.
It's actually, oftentimes it's an improvement from water quality perspective when you going from gravel.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I just asked.
Yep, thank you. All right, want to do a motion?
Okay, yeah, sure. Can I make a motion to close the?
Hold on, Rosie. We got one more
yeah.
comment.
Oh, excuse me.
One more comment from Jim Deignan.
Yes.
What safeguards will be put in place to protect pedestrians walking into the parking lot from the street? And we'll just, as you move forward. So motion and then second and then come out of this.
Okay, so thank you for that comment. I make a motion to close this portion of the public hearing. Do I have a second? Somebody wave at me. Do I have a second? Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favour on the board, if we have an aye.
Aye.
Mark, Ethan, Jeff, myself. So, okay. So we're back into any further comments that the board might have, and I think we want to ask Randy to talk to the parking issues. You could.
I think parking and service level on C Street to get in and out, I think was the question, right?
Yeah, parking I'll hand over to Will.
Yep.
Not on C Street, on Eaton and Erie, as they go around the back way.
Understood.
Right.
Okay.
But
So
Well,
Randy, what might be helpful there is just a summarization of your report here.
sure. We looked at obviously the main access to the site is going to be C Street. We looked at Eaton and Erie and Cove Road and said, you know, from a traffic standpoint, would we expect people to use that? First of all, it's more circuitous than C Street, and you really have to, in order for somebody to take Eaton, Erie, onto Cove, down to the parking lot, they'd have to be probably a local that knows the roads, because it's not an obvious way to get to the site. And if they are a local, they would also know that C Street is is shorter and quicker than that route. So if you're a local, you're going to take the shortest, quickest route, which is C Street. Is it possible that those other roads could see some increase in traffic? Yeah, it's not impossible that, you know, they could see some increase in traffic. But we would not expect it to be significant because, again, it's more circuitous and longer, and it also includes a stop sign, which C Street does not. So that's why we focused on C Street, and we took we said if all of the traffic is on C Street, you know, a conservative approach, would C Street be able to handle it? So we looked at the standards. We looked at what Maine DOT has for the annual average daily traffic, which is the average traffic for a 24-hour period throughout the year. In the summertime, it's a little higher. You know, wintertime, it's going to be a little bit less. And then we looked at the standards for a typical road, and we compared, you know, the volume to what a standard road could handle, a standard road of that type could handle, and it's nowhere near the capacity of the roadway. So that's, you know, we were trying to directly respond to the ordinance adequate carrying capacity of the roadway. So, you know, summarized in our report, but what we came up with for findings is it's not even close to capacity.
Randy, do you think the extra parking will ameliorate the parking issue that's happened in the past with a lot of people parking along C Street? Because there's not been space to park when they went down to the rum line.
Yeah, I'll let Will address the parking more, but based on what I've seen and the increase in parking on site, you know, I would suspect or expect that the parking will start to migrate from where it currently parks on C Street down to the parking area, especially with some additional wayfinding signs, as Will had talked about.
Thank you. Will, do you?
Yeah, I just reiterate that we've certainly added a lot more on-site parking and delineated it better. I do think that some additional signage is going to help. There was also a question of how to get, I think, from this parking area down into the site. And they actually painted a stripe here to kind of designate a pedestrian way. And we've talked about when this gets repaved, actually potentially stamping it or painting it so that it's a clear pedestrian way, so that there's a safe way to get from this parking down here. Kind of similar to what Camden does with their crosswalks.
Thank you. Jeremy, yes.
I would add that, you know, I think Dave St. Laurent, I mean, the town's really trying to be proactive when it comes to pedestrian bike safety. So I will, you know, I guess I'll work with the town, Dave St. Laurent and the town manager and maybe Pathways to see what other things we can do in that area to address pedestrian safety. Okay.
Will, are there currently, I was looking at the plan, so there are no sidewalks currently as part of that from the upper parking lot to the lower down to the rum line?
No, there's nothing internal and nothing raised. And part of that is again, because this, basically every open square foot in here doubles as, you know, pedestrian, also boat access. The travel lift needs to come from the travel lift into, excuse me, into building 1.
Right.
So it needs to cross through the same area that the pedestrians are going to be using that area. So, I mean, part of having, you know, some development in the boatyard just means that there's some coordination and people need to be paying attention. I dealt with this when I helped Front Street Shipyard, and the city of Belfast actually put their Riverwalk right across the front of the travel lift pier. And, you know, my thought on that initially was, you know, do you guys really want to do this? But both the city and the boatyard up there wanted to welcome the more people, the better. And it's been amazing. You go up there and there's people watching the boats come and go, and it's worked out well. And it's become a very harmonious, relationship between the public and the boatyard. I think that's, from my conversations with Drew and Cavett and Josh, that's what they're looking for, to get more public here and make it all work. But I don't have a raised sidewalk because the travel lift needs to be able to travel through there.
So maybe to Jeremy's point, it's a flush mounted, some kind of demarcation.
Yeah, and that's when I'm going to blow it up just a little bit. Like I said, they actually painted a stripe when Rumline started to make it clear where that should go. So right now there's a stripe painted, and we're talking about doing something more than just a stripe, like making that whole strip a different color or texturing it, but making it very clear that that's a pedestrian way.
It sounds like a good solution. Good, Jeremy.
Just a comment on wayfinding sign that I think is a good thing. I live here in Belfast, so I do walk, the Harbor Walk here in Belfast, and having signage that says working shipyard and pedestrians stay in a certain location is really helpful down up here. And I assume Lyman Morris can do something similar as you're coming off of the parking lot, heading down that 5-foot wide painted striped area that tries to get people, focus people that you are in a working area, you're in a shipyard, please stay where you're supposed to be. Make sense?
I like that.
Thank you.
Please, please and thank you. Yes, please.
Has there been there's this conversation about signage and possibly the need for better signage so people know kind of where they're going when they head onto C Street. So if that signage is off-site, whose responsibility does that become? Jeremy?
So the town prohibits off-premises signs right now. So they could not, we have Lyman Morris put signs out. I mean, frankly, we also don't want people missing streets, not knowing where Lyman Morris is and continuing to Camden and have to turn around in Camden and head back up, Route 1 North. So I think there's opportunity for the town to tweak our sign ordinance in a way that can direct people to the right location of Route 1 and to the right location off of C Street or Eaton Ave or wherever people are coming from to the appropriate location at Lyman Morris. And I will be certainly looking at the sign ordinance to try to draft something in that regard. I think it's important, again, not just to get people off Route 1, but once they're on there, where do they go once they're onto Lyman Morris's property? If you look at, where the right of way ends, it's all the way up at C Street, and Lyman Morris. It's a challenging location for them to put signage to get it conveyed to people in the right of way. And I'll certainly work on some sign amendments to try to facilitate that. I think it's a no-brainer.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Ethan. I just have a question. Has any consideration been given to permit parking only for residents along C Street or something along those lines?
There has not been any consideration about permit parking on Pearl Street or on Chestnut or Bayview where we have other issues. So no, we have not gone down that road. I think the town is trying to holistically look at parking management. And I think in the next year or so, there'll be some changes in town, or I think we're going to try to propose some changes in terms of managing parking. Street park, this is a tough one. And I mean, I'll let you guys chat about it, but street parking is street parking. It is not necessarily, it is everyone's parking. It is not necessarily the property owners in front of their house is not theirs. It's not the business owners parking that's in the town right away. It's everyone's public parking. So we can certainly look at doing things like permit parking in certain neighborhoods. It's possible, but we are holistically trying to look at parking management in town. Thus far, I don't think we've reached this far over to this side of the harbor, but we can certainly start looking at it. I mean, I get that people are concerned. I'm hoping that with this development, there becomes changes operationally, and there's more parking on site, and they can do some more signage that people will just start parking. It does no one any good. Lyman Morris doesn't do them any good if people can't find a place to park. And they want people to get there and not impact neighbors. They want people to get there safely and to get to the property. So, I think this is a team effort. amongst everyone. I mean, this is not the only location we hear about parking. We hear about parking everywhere. I don't necessarily think parking is as bad in Camden as people make it out to be. That's just, I've come from a lot of different communities that have, think they have parking issues. It's really about people want to park right in front of where they want to go without walking. So we'll look at it holistically, Ethan. I appreciate the comment.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or concerns? Mark, please.
Another question, and Will, this may be for you. In the plans here, under approved conditions, it talks about structures are to be constructed in accordance with Article 6 of the Town of Camden Floodplain Management Ordinance, and that's to be put in the deed and follow the property. What's the reasoning on that? Jeremy?
Well, I was going to say the town has a floodplain management ordinance, and any building that's built within the floodplain has to apply for a separate permit stating that we meet all the guidelines within the floodplain management ordinance. So that's a process that we're going to have to go through with Jeremy. And I actually submitted a copy of that application to the town. I think you should have a copy.
Right. I guess my question is, once you need that to build the building, but once the building is built, why does that need to follow the deed?
I think it's just one more safeguard to ensure that those rules are being followed, and that any new owner knows that they're in the floodplain and that they need to still continue to abide by those floodplain rules. There's a whole floodplain construction manual that outlines what needs to be done according to FEMA's rules.
Like that thick.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's probably, out of all the ordinance and regulations that we have to deal with, that one is the worst. It's one set of rules for the entire country. So it doesn't matter if you're building in Louisiana or in Texas or on the dunes of South Carolina, the rules are the same. And so it's not easy to write a set of rules that apply equally to all those different types of areas and storm events and soils conditions. So as you can imagine there.
So would this be just maybe a document to insure against title insurance in the future?
I don't think that the recorded piece has much to do with title insurance.
No.
Got Jeremy's.
Yeah, it's an odd one. It's an odd one. You remember we did the same thing for Tom Hedstrom at the last meeting that we had, a similar thing. They've got to get their local floodplain permit. It's part of the condition. You're going to make sure that they comply with article, not only the approval criteria and the site plan requirements, but the article in the floodplain ordinance. And that is, like Will said, it is quite the document, and they've got to go quite through the process. In some locations where you have enclosed areas below the floodplain, you got to have it configured so you got louvers that open up and let floodwaters in and then out. We don't thankfully have to deal with that in this case, but it's an interesting one.
I understand all that. I didn't understand why it's tied to the deed.
It's in the ordinance.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the point of that is.
Okay.
Other than just to make it one more way for people to know that it exists.
And I will say, when it comes to mortgage lending, years ago, banks were doing a very lousy job, and frankly, about lending. They weren't doing their due diligence on floodplain mortgages, and things have changed quite a bit since then. And so, no one's going to get a construction loan or a mortgage, and if you're in the floodplain. The banks are quite serious about it these days. So just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, and thank you, Jeremy, for raising that, because I think that's part of it. I think it is the bank lending aspect of it is important, and that it follows the deed. Can I take this in another direction, Will, and just ask about the screening heights? Many of the comments from the neighbors, and I want to express, first of all, that the majority of the neighbors the abutters are actually in favor of the project, based upon, certain things being met. And I appreciate that you've worked with them and considered their interests. One of the consistent comments seems to be something along the lines of they want screening, they want to protect from sound, but they want screening that's not so high as to obstruct their view, which is, of course, everybody wants everything they can get, and I appreciate their interest, and I appreciate your interest too as a developer, developing the project. Have you considered all of the comments that have come in, and can you sort of address? I can't raise each one specifically because I don't want to reread them back into the record, but you have people saying they're hoping that the Norway maples will go down, or that the height will not be higher than 10 feet so that they can still have that view of the harbor. Right. Have you looked at those, Will, and are they being accounted for?
Yeah, we knew that those maple trees have been a thorn to some of the neighbors. So, I mean, those are going to have to come down. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. There's not a lot of space between the retaining wall and the property line there. So we really can't plant anything of any size. Our thought was to just have something along the top of that wall, as much to protect anybody from going over the top of that wall. It's only 4 feet high, but still, it's the section of wall where the propane tanks are, and it's about 4 feet tall there at the tallest. And so we're thinking just some low-growing shrubs along the top of that wall, just to keep anybody from.
Yeah, and Ethan, I think I know Carl put in his letter that we weren't responsive to his needs, and part of that is that I've always tried to make sure we have a nice buffer from the residential neighborhood so that they don't look at this stuff. So we're willing to work with them on heights and all that stuff, but that was kind of the whole point, was to kind of create a buffer and a veiling there. So we want some of that, and we're certainly open to working with them on the views and things like that. So
yeah, thanks, Drew. And that was the only one comment that did concern me, actually, was that he felt you were not responsive. Is it true that you weren't even like engaging with him on it, or is it that you just weren't giving what he asked for?
No, I mean, I think he emailed me a few times, and then I never got back to him just because I got busy. But the other side is I really wanted that buffer to make sure that there was, when the crane's running and we got the lift in front of him, we have that in Thomaston. We have neighbors calling up because, they can see right into the boatyard. So, I'm a big fan of the veiling when you come to a commercial industrial spot. So, yeah, I mean, but I met with Carl, and we'll work with those guys. Yeah. Especially now, as we get through this, that, once we have the plan, it's a lot easier to kind of react to kind of a set plan now, right? I didn't want to just.
Yeah. So I guess I just as a citizen, less as a planning board member, the fact that he wrote to you and didn't receive a response, I think, is unfortunate. But because we want to build those relationships with the neighbors, especially as and when you look at a project like this, that's when it's going to come down. Some of I don't know if it was him or someone else, but they asked for, commenting rights on the actual landscaping plan. I think that's probably excessive. I don't think as a planning board, we're prepared to start opening up, approval of your landscaping plan to the neighbors. But I just, again, I want to have that assurance for them that our job is to represent them and make sure that their voices are heard insofar as the landscaping goes, so that it meets the maximum buffer, but also provides the best possible view that they can have of the harbor.
Yeah. So Ethan, let me correct one thing. We responded every time to Carl, and we said no, we didn't want to cut the trees down. So that was not the response he wanted.
Okay. Well, that changes it a lot, right? Because
Bob Flake, the general manager for the boatyard, responded to him, and we replied that at this time we didn't want to do that. So, we try to be good neighbors here. We put up fences, we put up veiling, when we have to. We've had good conversations with these neighbors, and so I think you're on the we should keep going on the planning board side and not discuss my interactions with the neighbors personally. But anyway, keep going if you want to.
No. I get that. That changes everything. That a response came from Lyman Morris is much different than no response came.
Yeah, Bob Flight is a great guy. Most of you guys know him. He responds every time. So
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions or comments on the planning board at this point? Okay, so then we need to make a decision now if we're done with this part of the meeting. We've either got to go through and consider each of these points separately, or we need to say it's 10 to 8, and do we want to consider finishing this up at our next meeting?
And I'm going to
I
jump
don't mind
right in
either
and
way.
say, I'm going to jump right in and say I make a motion that we continue this meeting.
Okay.
We haven't even started with the criteria.
Yeah.
So
I would second that motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Jeremy?
And then I guess you could, after that, maybe take some discussion and then do some vote, but I want to just comment on something as you move forward. So what you have done before you do this, what you have done thus far tonight is you've held the public hearing aspect and you've closed that. The public comment, the second comment period is closed. So what you guys are doing in essence is you are continuing your review of the site plan application and the approval criteria until the next meeting. We are not, the public hearing's been closed. And we've had opportunity for that to happen. I just want people to know that because, again, if you move forward right now, you would not be going to get more public comment. You would be basing everything on the record that you have in front of you right now. So
yeah, and Jeremy, would you prefer that be part of the motion? Because I'm happy to revise.
Well, I mean, that's fine. I think it's the reality of what happened tonight, right?
Right. I mean, it's already done. Would you like it in there just for?
I think that's appropriate, and it's really to go through the approval criteria, you know.
Okay. So I'll revise my motion. I move that we continue the hearing after the closing of public comment to consider to deliberate among as the board for the approval criteria.
I would say.
Is that not enough?
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I mean, you've continued the hearing, you closed the public comment period, and you're going to review the approval criteria next week or 2 weeks.
Right.
Perfect.
How about continue the meeting for the sole purpose of reviewing the approval criteria?
I like that, Jeannie. I'll try it one more time. I'd like to make a motion to continue the meeting for the sole purpose of deliberating and discussing the approval criteria.
Seconded.
All right. All those in favor?
Oh, yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Jay, Mark, Ethan, Matt, Rosie. Yes. All in favor. Thank you.
Okay. One other final
Jeremy.
thing before, I want to make sure that everyone understands, planning board members, that you have what you have in front of you and what's been presented. That is what you're reviewing. You are not to take more comment from the public. You're not to, reach out to the applicant, to do that. You're basing your review in 2 weeks on what you've heard tonight.
Thank you, Mark.
So with that motion, that sets the date for 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Yes.
I mean,
So that's December the 3rd. And I think, and we have the Macmillan site plan public hearing then, which we anticipate will be fairly short and straightforward. So I think our thinking was we'd do the Macmillan plan and then pick this back up after that. Is that correct, Jeremy?
I think that's appropriate. Mr. McMillan's he's pushed this back in order to accommodate this meeting as well. So I think moving forward, and he's got a closing that has to happen 2 or 3 days after our planning board review or your planning board review. So we'll do Mr. McMillan's project on Colcord Avenue first, and then we'll dive right into the approval criteria at this one.
And the applicant is okay with this? Will, Drew?
No, I mean, listen, you guys, whatever works for you guys. The reality is we need to get this thing going. every week we lose now reduces the time for that foundation to go in before the summertime. And we do not want to be doing a foundation midsummer. So, but anyway, it's, you know, I know you guys are doing the best you can, and I really appreciate, you know, the help.
I mean, is it a possibility? We've taken in a lot of information tonight and just worked through a lot of stuff. So I'm unwilling to kind of push the board to start working through approval criteria when everybody's kind of already just been kind of bombarded with stuff. Would it be an option to look at meeting next Thursday to finish this off rather than the Thursday after, Jeremy? No, it needs to wait.
That's Thanksgiving.
Oh, of course it is. Sorry, I'm not American.
You're right. You're
Jeremy, hold on, Jeremy. The
Sorry,
Your British is showing.
on my radar.
Since we're all at home this Thanksgiving.
Yeah, there is no Thanksgiving.
We're here anyway.
So this could be it.
Yeah, I'm getting caught up on work on Thanksgiving. I'm good.
Listen, I mean,
Jeannie will bring the turkey.
And the rum cake. Wait a minute. What do you mean, just the turkey?
I'll bring dessert.
All right, does that,
thank Rosie.
Yeah.
Rosie, that was super nice. I mean, listen, we'll however we can support you guys, and yeah.
I mean, though I wish we could have got it done today. I do know winter's coming, and yeah, really. So, but I think it's very important. I mean, it's a big project. It's a long-term project. And I think it's important from all sorts of perspectives that we really do due diligence in making sure this is properly reviewed and seems to be properly reviewed as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah, thank you.
again, I'm going to reiterate, board, please stay with what you have in front of you and the information you've obtained today. So you can't go out there and get more info from the public, the applicant, anybody. It is what it is. The record is standing right now. So that is what it is. So please, when you're out and about with the public, you can't be conversing about it with people. It is what it is. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Jeannie and Janice and Will and applicants, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have anything else we need to cover before we wrap this up, Jeremy?
No, ma'am.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
I think that's unanimous.
Finally, an efficient
Just jump right in there.
Look at Matt with the motions.
You know it's been a long meeting.
You're in charge of motions next week, Matt.
Yeah, you know it's coming.
That was efficient. I like that.
You know, I figure Senders is leaning back there. I don't want to forget it.
Barely awake.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. See you in 2 weeks.